Welcome, everybody, to Wednesday Night Modern. My name's Aviva Goodman alongside Dominic Stryker, and we're going to be providing commentary for 4 rounds of fantastic modern coverage. We're so happy that you're here to watch these games with us, Dominic. Dominic, how you doing tonight, man?
I'm in heaven.
Yeah, this is your favorite deck. We've had Ray on a couple of times here. He's running this, I think, 4-color, potentially, Reanimator package against David, who's rocking Living End tonight for our first round of the match. Ray, we've had on a couple of times with his deck list, and he said you might be running this yourself.
Yeah, if anyone's in the super local scene, you'll most likely catch me running this 4-color Goryo variant. And David on the left side is playing the deck I've gotten the most RCQ ninth place with, which is Living End. This deck is all geared up from the new Lord of the Rings set with additional land cyclers, allowing the deck to cut down to like 14 to 15 lands and allow them to put 6 giant creatures into their creature base now. We even see an Oliphant sitting in the front of David's hand here, just going to clean up all their mana troubles, but being met with a grief out of Ray Ray's deck, pitching the namesake Goryo's Vengeance.
He couldn't fit the whole title of his deck name into our submission folder. It is "Wake Me Up Before, You Goryo." A little bit too long for our HUD here, but that is what he coined the deck.
Right. I have a fun story about Living End while we're doing some cycling and some griefing. So I played this in an RCQ maybe about 6 months ago against NRG champion Matt Hoey.
Mm-hmm.
And unfortunately, before the beginning of the event started, I forgot to put my name on my deck list. The worst thing.
Oh
you could
gosh,
do, right?
I mean, I've been there. I've done that.
And the person running the RCQ goes, "Hey, who here is playing Living End? Anyone here playing Living End?"
Oh gosh.
And I'm like, "Oh man, that's me." They're like, "You forgot your name on your deck list. What's your name?" I'm like, "Okay." So then I sit down to play against Matt, and he goes, "Hey, I know from the pre-game announcement what
Yeah.
deck you're playing."
Pretty easy scouting there. Let's see
Right.
what Dave's got in his hand, though. We got a land, an Oliphant, a Curator.
So this is interesting. So Ray's going to use their Ephemerate to flicker this grief to take as many cards away from David, leaving them with just their Oliphant. But what's weird is when you are playing against Living End, they want these creatures in the bin anyways.
Mm-hmm.
So Ray was on the hunt to find like a Cascader or a Forest or something that David was going to use to interact, and instead just saw a handful of creatures.
Absolutely, yeah. So then what did Hoey do? Did he play as though he didn't know what you were on?
Hoey crushed me.
Yeah.
Just absolutely obliterated me.
He's got a knack for doing that.
They did the coolest play I've ever seen, which is because I'm playing Living End, they brought in Tormod's Crypt against me.
Mm-hmm.
But then they attacked me with their Murktide Regent, and then activated Tormod's Crypt, targeted themselves, and made their Murktide like a 17/17 and destroyed me. I was like,
that's pretty nice.
This is the coolest thing I've ever seen. As we see Ray's getting those grief beats on, David on very low resources used Oliphant, found a land, so kind of replaced it, but we're already good on lands. And we have 2 mystery cards, but a tapped Stomping Ground tells me that we don't have a cycler.
Yeah.
So our 2 cards are, interestingly, we don't have a cycler because we played this tapped, and we didn't shock it to hard cast a force. So that means our hand is most likely just air. It's either lands or cards we're looking to cycle.
And David plays, I presume, Violent Outburst too, so he doesn't have that either.
Right. So this tapped land shows us that both the 3-mana Cascaders aren't currently online, because if we're thinking about Ray's deck, their counter magic is very, very low.
Mm-hmm.
So we're just looking at the 3 cards that they have available, playing our new land. I see a Subtlety, and I think 2 lands out of David, so
that's not great draws since he's been griefed, and these beats are getting him down in life. He's down to 9 total. So
right.
3-turn clock here.
And this grief has menace for some reason, so even if we play out this Subtlety, we still can't even block. We need to find a second creature, and the one thing Living End is not great at is casting their creatures.
For sure. I think the cheapest one they have is a 5-drop.
4 in the Curator of Mysteries, the like 4/4 Sphinx, which is usually what I recommend to be the last one you cycle because it's the easiest to cast. And I believe David's other card is an Odawara. So if they're starting to feel a lot of pressure, they might be able just to return this grief to Ray's hand. But then that means you're going to get re-griefed. So it's not even a winning proposition there either.
All right, Ray's resolving a Preordain here. He's going to pick up, I believe, a Fable he saw off the top.
Oh, yeah. This is, so there's been this interesting split for these the Goryo's Vengeance based decks
Hmm.
is there is the Esper 3-color based version, recently popularized by Aspiring Spike, that allows basically an all in on the Goryo's Vengeance plan,
Hmm.
but has a lot of like preordain and forces and a lot of cards that dig to allow you to very actively get to that Goryo's plan. And then there's the version that Ray is playing that has the like Fables and other more mid-rangey cards that
Yeah.
allows this to be a deck that can function with or without the Goryo's combo. As we see, this Odoar is picking up this grief. We even saw this when Ray played last week, that they just have a very solid mid-range plan that could, oops, here's an Atraxa into play, versus being a deck that's entirely based around putting Atraxa and hoping for the best. Ray's deck allows them to both grind while also having a nut draw, which is a part of the power of a deck like Scam. It allows it to have like, here is a nut draw that can just like put the game away, but also a deck that's really, really good at grinding and applying just hammers. So Ray's got that as opposed to just a straight Esper Reanimator.
I think Ray feels is pretty comfortable in those more mid-rangey plans. I think a lot of the decks that we've seen doesn't really have those bomb nut draws like you see.
Yeah, he's been on 4-color control soups for a little while before finding this.
Yeah, he was playing like a Soren's Ransom sort of deck
Yes.
at one point. Here comes the Fable here. I was just about to look at his deck. I think Fable is the only red card in his
Yes.
deck besides the one of Croxa and
Kunaros.
Kunaros.
So the Croxa and Kunaros is taking over the Grizzlebrand slot,
Hmm.
which is wild to think that there's a card that is contesting with Grizzlebrand, right?
Right.
But one of the parts that's really good about this Croxa versus Grizzlebrand is Croxa pitches to both our pitch cards. Both Solitude and Grief can be pitched with Croxa and
Right.
Kunaros, but also Croxa and Kunaros have a reanimate attached to their ETB as well. So you can end up in scenarios where the card Ugorios is this 6-power lifelinker that also brings an Atraxa with it, which is Grizzlebrand draws 7, but Grizzlebrand doesn't put Atraxa into play. Speaking of which, she's going to the bin from this Fable trigger.
I think I saw 2 more Grief sitting in Ray's hand, by the way.
Oh. And we've had this Goryo since the very beginning of the deck. Beginning of the game, we pitched one to a Grief because we had a second one.
Hmm.
Ray drew a Force here, so they're going to be able to Goryos with their Force hard cast up.
Right. David has both a force and a subtlety here. Not what relevant, but can
Right.
get pitched. Or
We're
excuse
tapping
me.
a Misty Rainforest. Wee, 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 wee. That's all right, but David sees the writing on the wall because Ray has the hard cast backup for his own force to fight back against David's force, allowing this Atraxa to come into play. And importantly, the Goryos gives the creature haste. So not only is Atraxa coming in and drawing 4 to 5 cards, but also it's going to attack him with lifelink. An important part about this deck having the Fable package is it allows for one more card type hit off your Atraxas. Usually the deck can like cap out at 4, but this being a preordained Fable version, you have many more card types available to you.
Absolutely. As players go into sideboard, and here let's take a look at Ray's deck. This is the deck list he submitted to us. So this is the full 75 he's working with. Let's see what his sideboard looks like. He's got an Emrakul, 3 Prismatic Endings, 4 Celestial Purges, 2 Chalice of the Voids, 1 Pithy Needle, 2 Sony Silences, and 2 Leyline of the Voids. What cards do you think he's looking to bring in here, Dom?
Leyline of the Void. So one of my favorite parts about Leyline in a deck that has black mana sources is not only do they have the Leyline feature available here of if it's in my opening hand, I get it for free, and it will deal with the graveyard out of the living end deck, but also it's a card that could pitch to Grief if you happen to draw it, and you have black mana sources, so you can even cast it if you get into a grindy game. Outside of that, obviously there is the Chalice of the Void. These cards are here as the hammers against these cascade strategies.
Right, you can cast it for 0.
For 0, exactly right. Once you have it on 0, when they try to cascade into Living End, which has no cost, ergo 0, that card will be countered.
What about this Emrakul at the top? That's a potential include as well, just for another hit on Goryos, but it does, excuse me. You can't hit it off Goryos because it shuffles back in?
But thankfully, Goryo is an instant, so you can tag it before Emrakul shuffles itself away. But one, Emrakul will shuffle your whole graveyard away, which against Living End, you want to keep your graveyard. And so I think just on that regard, all of the threats that we do have are cards that our inherent strategy of playing Faithful Mending and Tainted Indulgence and Fable to draw and discard. We can put our own Grief, Solitude, Croxa, Atraxas into the bin to get back when a Living End happened, but we don't get that if we bring in this Emrakul. So I imagine it's just the ley lines and the chalices, and Emrakul can stay home for the mill matchup.
Sounds like a solid game plan for Ray there. Let's take a look at a living end deck. This isn't the exact deck that David has. He didn't submit a deck list, but this is a general sort of stock list that he might be working with.
Yes, the most important, even though this is stock, is looking at cards like Foundation Breakers, Force of Vigors, and Endurance. So we're bringing in, most likely no matter what, when you're playing Living End post board, you want to bring in some number of naturalize abilities because your opponent will typically have an enchantment or an artifact to deal with your graveyard. So Foundation Breaker and Force of Vigors allow you to answer their answers before you go off. And then, as we see, starting with a Grief, which is fantastic for the Living End strat. And the last thing, as I was saying, we most likely want to bring in our own endurances because, one, Ray can stock their own graveyard, so it's good to put that on the bottom, but also interact with Ray's Goryo strategy. So our own endurances are at a premium because they do double duty against Ray, both cleaning up their graveyard overall, but also counteracting their Reanimator plan.
Taking a look at Ray's hand here, we got a Fable, an Atraxa, a Goryo's Vengeance, that Croaks and Kunaros we talked about, Preordain, and 2 lands.
My favorite,
David's
you saw
gonna
Ray.
opt
Ray points at
that
the
Preordain.
Traxa. Pick this.
Yeah,
Take this.
yeah.
Put this in the bin for me.
Just trying to help our opponents out a little bit. Hey, how about
Right.
that?
It's an interesting choice here for David because there's the Preordain, which is clearly Ray's like early game to like smooth out their draw and figure out what they want to do. Or there's Fable, their only way to get this Atraxa and this Kunaros into the graveyard. So this shows me that David may be looking to go for an early Living End and gets the only thing that digs for interaction out of the way versus getting Ray's setup piece out of the way, knowing that they may already Living End before Ray gets to that point. So, Ray getting to see 3 cards deep and then like a 4th over the turn to find graveyard answers is now what David wants. David can now see that the majority of Ray's hand does not interact with Living End, which is the whole goal.
Sure. Or he could have brought in those cards that you said, like a Force of Vigor, Foundation
Right.
Breaker, that deals with that enchantment that Ray's got there.
It's very true, right? Maybe realizing like, oh, I can use these effects not for their intended purpose, but instead deal with this Fable before it becomes a problem. Yeah, it's interesting because Living Ends, always their plan A is just to shove the Living End to get the creatures from their graveyard into play. And when you look at Ray's hand, 5 of these 6 cards do not stop you from that, and 1 is just whatever they found off the top. So David putting themselves in the best spot to immediately just go for it on turn 3.
Yeah, and already has 2 creatures in the graveyard. He played that Grief on turn 1, cycled the Curator of Mysteries on turn 2. And then on turn 3, he will have his Cascade spells available to him.
And we still have a mana up, so we're most likely going to get a 3rd creature in the bin before we untap for our turn 3 as well.
Right, we got those 1 mana cyclers in Generous Ent and Oliphant. Those will help him find his land drops as well.
But as we see, we untapped. I did see a flash of a Violent Outburst in their hand. But even it looks like we may also have a Grief. If we have a black card, we get a 2nd Grief into the bin. And if we do that plus Living End, we can really tear Ray's hand apart. We have an Endurance of our own as well.
Beseju's land for turn, which is unfortunate because it can't get used later on against the Fable.
Right. If you are Ray and David plays their Beseju as land per turn, that usually tells you that they most likely don't have any more lands left in hand.
Right, so the rest of their hand is a bunch of heat.
Right. It is either those Cyclers or those Cascaders or a way to interact because most likely you would much rather take 2 off a shock land instead of play that land out. We see David understands Living End that we're going to pass turn and Violent Outburst on Ray's turn. What this means is now our Force of Negations are live to be free because it's now Ray's turn.
Right. Ray's going to take a quick look at what David flipped over there. Always a good idea if you're playing against a Living End player, just to see what they potentially could have boarded in, like that Endurance he's pointing out.
Exactly. Thanks. Ray's doing a great job of letting us know exactly what pieces we're looking at here. It'll be interesting to see if David responds to his own Living End. Some players will put Living End on the stack and then like pitch some street rates or whatever, now knowing that it's like they've hit the card. Knowing that Ray didn't like cast a silence or something to stop this interaction. But it looks like David's going for what I call the little Living End, right? Just getting their Grief and their Curator of Mystery. They're still getting 7 power into play plus a Thoughtseize effect, which looks like it has taken this Fable here, allowing David to just basically be on kind of a mid-range plan. If I just have 2 threats, you don't have a lot of problems. Let's see how fast I can kill you before you can do something about it.
And Ray drew 2 lands since that last Grief. Is going to slam down his draw for turn, which is little to fairy. Gonna bounce the curator back, and that'll prevent some extra life loss the next turn. He's just gonna take 3 against this grief.
Right, and this grief is definitely going to attack Teferi because Teferi interacts like a chalice against these cascading strategies
Right.
because you can only play at sorcery speed and your cascade is on the stack, therefore you can't put something else on the stack. What instant speed versus sorcery speed means. So now they are forced to deal with this Teferi. So this Teferi overall, quote unquote, has gained 7 life. It dealt with a 4/4 and 8/3 from this grief,
Mm-hmm.
allowing Ray to do what he wants to, which is bridge closer into this mid game.
David took 2 from a Street Wraith cycle as well. He's got a bunch of cards in his hand, and Ray is going to play a grief for his turn. Just a hard cast grief there.
David, looks like we're thinking we possibly may want to dig through, but it looks like, yeah, this is absolutely a hand that we can just reveal to our opponent.
Already picking the
Yeah.
card for Ray there. He's going to pitch an Endurance, a borderless one there.
Yeah.
Revealing 2 Shardless Agents, that Curator, and I believe a Mystical Dispute?
We have a Mystical Dispute, yeah. If I was Ray, you know, I was hoping to snipe 1 Cascader, but David has 2 Shardless Agents, so the grief couldn't have taken that package away. So we're finding what is the most, what's the word?
Impactful?
Impactful, but also unique. Like, Endurance is the only card in his hand that is that style of effect, where there's 2 Shardlesses, right? So Razor's the opportunity to take the most unique effect that they can.
I've learned that a lot recently. I've started playing a Rakdos deck on Arena, and when you come across, multiple copies of a card, taking one away doesn't really do anything because they still have one. It might be scary to see 2 big threats in their hand and you can deal with one, but that doesn't really change anything. So yeah. Going for a 1 of card in their hand is generally a better idea.
And it looks like David is scooping them up here. What's really important in that argument as well is it's different when you see like a Living End deck. Living End having two Cascaders means they'd Living End and Living End again, which is not advantageous. But let's say you're playing against a Rhinos player. Rhinos is looking to go Cascade, untap, Cascade again, and that's not a problem.
Can we go back to the game here, though? They just shook up because Ray won?
I believe so. It looked like...
He cast a Can't Stay Away. I believe the card is...
We cast
it was Tainted
Indulgence,
excuse me, Tainted Indulgence.
which is the draw and discard, and I believe it would have been the Kroxa and Kunaros Gorios bringing back the Atraxa, putting 2 massive threats that target up against David's threats, and David seeing his hand is most likely just looping through some more of their Living Ends. Seems like that was done for the game for them.
All right, so even though David had a good start at the beginning of that game too, Ray flipped over a great card and managed to take that away. We're going to head into our backup match now, which will feature
Beans.
George rocking Vamp Beans.
Beans.
He heard the call last night. We put out an ask for people playing new Wilds of Eldraine cards, and then Luke is playing a Rakdos mid-range deck here. I already see some beans on the board. Up the Beanstalk, a new card from Wilds of Eldraine. It's a 2-mana enchantment. Draws you a card on entry, as well as whenever you cast a 5-mana spell. So people
5 or greater, which
5
is really
or greater,
important, right?
excuse me. Yeah.
Which means George most likely drew cards off these 2 Leyline bindings in play. We can see they have cards like Lorien Revealed in their graveyard that if you ever hardcast, draws additional cards off beans.
That's a draw 4 with the beans on the field.
Yeah, with these double beans, it becomes a... And then,
5 draw.
Oof.
A Blood Moon hits the table, though we are in game 2 here, so we do have sideboarded cards. And with these triomes, they're all going to become mountains. George does have some insulation with a plains and an island, however.
Absolutely. And I was talking with George before, has truly altered his control strategy to try to see how far they can push up the beanstalk. Trying wraths that aren't Supreme Verdict. Trying to overpay for prismatic endings so you can pay up to 5 to allow you to trigger up the beanstalk when targeting maybe a 2-drop, as we see a Ragavant eating a Fire Ice alongside that Orc Army token, allowing Fire to be basically a Supreme Verdict, just dealing with both these threats for George.
Yeah, really nicely there. I will note as well, 2 Leyline Bindings already cast by George, getting a Orcish Bowmaster and a Dothy Voidwalker, I believe.
And also, interestingly, that they were able to sneak out the bindings before this Blood Moon. So less worry about bindings being more expensive right now. I say as they cast a 3-mana binding through this Blood Moon. But also drawing 2 cards off double beans.
Yeah. The nice thing about Leyline Binding is it does get discounted, but it does still trigger that effect. It is a 6-mana spell, I believe, unaltered.
Oh, and a third up the beanstalk for George as well.
Let me get his deck list here. There's a couple of his fans in chat. They said he dropped his deck list earlier. He didn't
Hmm.
deign to do it to us here. I can go into his Discord myself and find it though. So give me just a moment here.
I believe we were talking about playing some one of fun ofs that I don't want to give too much away in case they come up because they are some spicy cards out of George.
Yeah, we had a last minute ask from me at about 5:30 even.
Yep,
He was
which you
like, "Hey, can you go dig in the back stock for this card?" So we'll see if that card comes up at all.
and I will reveal you did find the mystery card.
Hmm.
George registered one copy and he gave the second copy to Brian Tepper, and Tepper is also out there playing the new
Really?
spice.
All right, we'll see. We'll see if it helps out here. This board is getting a little cluttered. George now has 6 enchantments on the field.
Yeah, it needs to get like our Sithis or something, start getting our Enchantress engine going.
Absolutely. Luke just played a Hardcast Fury on his turn. And
And
George went,
George
sounds good.
seeking up this plains here. Terminus. There it is.
Ooh.
Terminus. If you guys are fans of old school Miracle Legacy, you may have seen Terminus. George just casts Terminus, which is put all creatures in play on the bottom of their owner's library, triggering triple beans, drawing 3
Oh my
cards.
goodness.
This is one of the 2 alternate wraths that George is trying out today
Hmm.
to see just how far they can push up the beanstalk. This card has been such an impactful value engine that I was watching earlier today players playing up the beanstalk and the One Ring in their deck,
Mm.
and up the beanstalk making so much value that people were cutting copies of the ring because this card was just doing enough early on to just push past that advantage.
It's a fairy down in the field. We'll bounce that fairy back into Luke's hand. Now, if you cast Terminus for its miracle cost, that will not trigger up the beanstalk. Is that correct?
I believe it still will because it is still a 6 mana card being cast for an alternate cost.
Okay.
Kind of like how Ragavan's always a 1 even though you dash it. Like how Leyline Binding's always a 6 even though you played it for 1, right? Cards like Up the Beanstalk will always check that top right corner kind of no matter what you had paid for it. Because some people are looking to combine Up the Beanstalk with Bring Delight. Go Bring Delight for 5, draw cards, and then find a 5-drop, draw more cards off your
Mm.
Beanstalk.
Ooh, and I think that's a Junji Ito secret layer.
Thoughtseize, Dothy into Thoughtseize. So Luke was trying to take George's best card and make it Luke's best card, but answered with the George DeBoer Invitational card counterspell. That's a lie. It's not a set, but counterspell
Yeah.
is very powerful here, just allowing them to play their
Oh
fourth
boy, we
bean.
got 4 beans on the field, 4 up the beanstalks. Any spell,
Yeah.
5 or greater is gonna draw George 4 cards now. His deck is gonna start looking a little thin if this game goes
Yeah.
on for much longer.
But I would suspect if it's George, he's got Days Undoings, which will allow him to shuffle that whole graveyard back in and do it over again.
We're gonna swing in with this Doffy here, I presume, at the Teferi.
Most likely, just Teferi is the backbone of a control deck, allowing all of their counter magic to be uninteractable.
Ooh.
But here's Solitude, trigger, draw 4.
Oh man.
Oh my goodness.
And that is the scariest thing to me, is a control player with a grip full of
Yes.
cards.
And these have been the recent innovations of these control style strategies. With the printing of the One Ring, it allowed them to start getting advantage while playing their strategy. And now we're very clearly seeing, yes, George has drawn 4 of them, but George has drawn 4 because they keep playing the game, right? As the game goes longer and longer, you're going to find more up the beanstalk. So now George has 2 full value engines in their control strategy alongside their Lorians and Teferis and all these free pitch spells. And George doesn't like Omnath, but Omnath does really, really like to be here, right? Just allowing you to churn through, offset that life loss that you might be getting from cards like the Ring, and just allowing them to catch up from using their mana base effectively.
Yeah, George has talked a lot about how control players don't sometimes struggle with learning when to put the pressure back on their opponent,
Absolutely.
right? They play a very passive game, focused on not losing, and then they don't know how to switch it around and start winning the game.
Yeah.
And so I believe George is going to start trying to do that here. He's got so many pieces on his board that he can use his namesake card there.
Right.
Here's one of his favorite cards, Narset, down on the field.
And you can see George respecting Lightning Bolt, not activating this Narset, leaving it on 5, knowing that doesn't want to give Luke any value off their cards, such as a Lightning Bolt that doesn't have very good targets here. Doesn't want to trade 1-for-1 with that. Want to stay up on value as much as George can. And you see him actively searching out these basics, doing double duty, right? Allowing them to maintain their life total, even though it's growing from this Omnath, but also allowing them to play around future Blood Runes if Luke does try to find them and slam them here as well.
Luke just was sitting with 1 card in hand. It looks like a land as well.
I think it might
Putting
be
on a brave face, but getting the game getting a little bit away from him here.
I think the card in hand might be the Fury that George bounced a few turns ago. I think we might be trying
Oh,
to find the time to slam it through George's counter magic. I don't remember seeing the Fury replayed since it's been bounced by the Teferi.
my apologies.
No, I could also be incorrect. That's the fun part is there's a Black Leaf Cliff debating over our final card in hand and passing it back.
Yeah, George has now played out his companion in Kahira.
Giving Omnath a +1 alongside everything else and the Vigilance. So
Yep.
this is a 5, 6, 7, 8 damage attack, putting Luke down to 5. Getting very close to just putting this game away.
George pitching a card to hand size. Gonna put a Terminus into the grave there.
Yeah, it's now been 2 turns in a row of George doing this. Just pitch some lands last turn, pitch this Terminus away this turn.
Mm-hmm.
Shows that there's just nothing left. We're very importantly going to a game 3 here.
Absolutely.
With these, these red-black based strategies, their whole goal is to grind you out with their cards like Thoughtseize and Grief and so forth, so that you have to play their game. And George's deck is looking to not allow that, for them to just draw as many cards as they possibly can, so that Thoughtseize doesn't mean much if you're playing up against all these draw 4s and draw 5s and draw 6s. So we are on this plan to try our best as George's deck to generate as much value, because Luke's going to try to take that value away from him.
We're gonna try and get George's deck list pulled up here. I did find a deck list called 4-color Daddy Omnath, so I think that might
Great.
be it. Let's see here. We're gonna try and get it pulled up. Is it not in the correct format?
That's all right.
Yeah. Well, if you want to go, you can go check out George's Discord. Jab Jabber on Twitter. Well-known, good control player. Check out his stuff. He's also got a good Patreon if you're looking for some guides on how to play his favorite card, Narset.
You got to give him money to get access to the Discord, so be weary out there. But we're playing beans.
We got some beans.
Yeah, I am hoping and wishing there is still some secret spice floating around.
This might not be the list unless he forgot to add that card he asked me for.
This daddy list is not his. I think that's another friendo in the Patreon trying to help each other out. But that is all right, as we are already off to the races with Luke playing a Bloodstained Mire and passing it back to George.
All right. Yeah, I think this is just other people in the Discord discussing other kinds of builds around this Up the Beanstalk card. People were very excited when it got spoiled, and at an uncommon, it's a pretty easy include, pretty
Absolutely.
cheap include in your deck.
I've been seeing it. I've seen these 4-color based strategies. I've been
Oh, there you go. It's in the chat there, Bryce, if you
Sweet.
want to grab it.
I have seen the Pioneer Animatic Incarnation decks picking it up too.
Ooh, sure.
It's a really good enchantment. It also plays alongside Leyline Binding. Yorion's legal in that format. Beanstalk's pretty good with Yorion.
Mm-hmm. Luke's going to cast a Bowmaster here in response.
Stern scolding.
Yep.
The old man's got to yell. But allowing them to get that tempo play right, allowing George to trade 1 mana for 2, and allowing them to bridge the gap from their first turn into their second turn.
Oh, boy. Dog's getting a little excited. Excuse us there if you can hear him.
Yeah, if you can hear the dogs be barking tonight.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, like I said, the Stern Scolding, a card that I'm not the biggest fan of, but it very clearly here let George trade up on mana, right?
Why aren't you a fan of it? I feel like we've seen it put to pretty good use in the games we've seen on stream.
I think mostly because it's narrow, but what it's narrow against is these Rakdos-based strategies and Yawgmoth-based strategies.
Yeah.
So when it does come in, it looks really, really good, right? It answers Ragavan, Bowmaster, Grief, like these cards that are really important out of these Rakdos-based strategies, and out of Yawgmoth, it answers like every single card in the deck is Stern Scoldable. But then the hard part is when you play against matchups that don't fall that well into the counterspell.
Sure, like a Living End deck. It's
Right.
it's very dead against.
And the part that always gets me about specific counter magic is if Luke plays it and you don't have the counterspell, you draw a counterspell next turn, it doesn't line up anymore. Whereas something like removal spell or something a little more flexible is able to line up before and after a spell. Counterspells only line up before. So it has a small window, and then it has a smaller window of things it can target. So that's the parts that's usually worry me as Luke. Did Luke just go upstairs with that bolt?
Luke's trying to push damage. He dashed in a Ragavan. George fetch and shocked, so he took 3 damage there to fire it. And then Luke, with his last remaining mana, sent a bolt upstairs. We're now back on his turn playing an Orcish Bowmaster.
But yeah, it does seem like Luke's playing aggressively, trying to put the game away before George can get anything built up.
I think that's what you gotta do against control, right? Aggro decks are the best thing against control. They go faster than control wants to go, and they put the pressure on them.
Yeah, control.
Force them to have the cards that they need to have.
Exactly, right? Control wants to get to the late game.
Mm-hmm.
Control is a late game deck. So the best way to deal with them is to not let them get to where they're comfortable, which in this case would be to apply as much aggression as possible. Between, Bolt, Bowmaster, dashing Ragavans allow you to try to apply that kind of pressure.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we do have the list in chat now. It's called refried beans. I don't know what's refried about it.
And it does have the spice all the way at the end of the.
There it is. Oh, it's main board.
Yeah, so we'll shoot that list out so folks can get a hold of it, and we'll see if we do some winning, we'll be able to see it some more later on today as well.
Mm-hmm. Up the beanstalk, back on the field for George, and he's holding up 2 blue mana sources.
These beans can talk. Up the beans talk.
A Thoughtseiz's there on the stack. George is going to think about it and let it resolve.
Oh, because we have Teferi, Terminus, Lorien Revealed, and Leyline Binding.
What are you picking here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Lots of good picks, I think.
Teferi,
pretty impactful. It does stuff as soon as it hits the field and continues if you don't deal with it, right? So it does just more stuff than the other spells, I think.
Right. Teferi has the most long-lasting impact here.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
The Lorien's doing what it's doing right now, cycling for the Spar's headquarters. The Leyline Binding answers one thing, whereas the Teferi might answer a thing and then have more of effect on the game. And what was George's last card?
Terminus, yeah.
Which at 6 mana, not exactly what George wants to be doing with that card, but does currently have stuck in hand.
The Teferi also triggers up the beanstalk, notably. When
if you're looking to bounce it and then replay it.
Sorry, is this little Teferi?
Yeah, little baby Teferi.
My bad, not Hero of Dominaria. Just the Time Rattler.
No, it doesn't take a lot to convince George to put 5-mana Teferi back in. So, up the beanstalk has looked very impressive, just allowing more churn. Control decks always being so specific of needing to find answers to the questions your opponents are giving, and this allows you to just churn through so much so that. George is even playing some wild ones like Logic Knot, which he said the words upgrade your counterspell to me when he said Logic Knot, allowing you to counter and trigger up the beanstalk because you can delve the cards away in a deck that doesn't very actively use its graveyard. And up the beanstalk being so powerful when I'm playing 3 copies of the ring, not the full 4.
And there it is with the custom protection from everything token as well. George has a pretty good draw engine going on. He's just got 2 cards in hand, 3. But I think that'll quickly change here. Luke has a turn here to potentially set up some stuff, as he can't do damage to him right away. But we're just going to draw and pass back.
This reads to me like Luke either has nothing to do or is going to try to lean on sneaking a Bowmasters in at some point. Just kind of their only piece of true flash-based interaction.
Yeah, I saw a land and a terminate at the very least.
Yeah.
A little bit hard to see
I think
there.
Possibly an Underworld Breach, which I think might have been the Rakdos piece Luke was leaning on last week. Pairs really well with the Bolt we played out a turn or 2 ago.
Absolutely.
But we'd have to lean on there not being any interaction out of the 6-card control hand or whatever we have here now. But I think we're going for it. And we've rethought it.
Luke really, really pondering here what he's going to do.
Just
a bolt.
Now, this is important because this bolt, George checking life duel, seeing going down to 6 from this bolt. Now Luke's Underworld Breach is looking juicier and juicier.
It's interesting why he would go for the bolt first.
Because
and then do the breach? No, just a
Dauthi
Voidwalker.
Because the big part is George's own ring here is also 2 points of damage. That I think we're just trying to put George in the range of dying to his own ring. But here's Solitude. So if this is allowed to make it through the turn cycle, we'll allow Lifelink to allow George to get out of range of dying to his own 1 ring. So we go down to 4 here. Yeah, if this Solitude's allowed to connect, then we're going to go up to 7. And now that puts us back in triple bolt range versus double.
However, you will still take damage from the ring again next turn, so I think it is still technically in double bolt range. Because
Oh,
the
yeah,
Solitude won't be able to swing and grab some life there.
absolutely. Which means George might be looking for a new ring, a Teferi, beans, right?
Sure, another up the beanstalk.
Note,
Welcome to chat. Someone in chat's asking, what is Bamp Beans? This is
uh,
a new card from Wilds of Eldraine up the beanstalk. It
yes,
draws a card. It's a 2-mana enchantment that draws a card, and anytime you cast a spell, mana value 5 or greater, you draw
draw
an
a
addition.
card.
You draw a card as well.
So George here is playing this card in a Bant Splashing Omnath ring-based control deck,
Mm-hmm.
using the one ring alongside Up the Beanstalk alongside free interaction such as Solitude, Subtleties, and then we're digging deep on playing some old school cards like Logic Knot and Terminus to turn our Supreme Verdicts and counterspells into cards that trigger off Up the Beanstalk. So we're seeing just how far can we push this draw engine alongside our counterspells, the Narset Days Undoing engine. George does have Teferi 5 in his deck.
Oh, he does. He's
We
just
are
got a
fully
spicy one of.
we are fully pushing this beans package to see just how much, George kind of started this trend of putting the one ring in a control deck
Mm.
alongside free counterspells and free magic, and now we're putting it alongside Up the Beanstalk, now having 7 total value engines alongside the control free spell engine. It just keeps going and going. It seems to be getting better and better.
All right, with this Fury on this deck, George drew 3 cards from the ring. Luke is gonna do 2 damage to each of those
Oh.
creatures and clear up the board.
It looks like we are currently not playing the main deck subtleties, but there are 2 in the sideboard. So if we had brought those in, might have been what George was digging for to try to answer that copy of Fury before just letting it do its thing.
George is gonna take 3 on his turn, still in double bolt range. Here comes the Underworld
Is the
Breach.
breach?
George with a grip full of cards,
Oh,
not immediately slamming a counter spell, but gonna take a look potentially at
yeah.
what's sitting in Luke's graveyard there.
And we've already drawn from our one ring. So the cards in hand are the cards George has to work with.
Mm-hmm.
So the question is have we let breach resolve?
It looks like it has because we are pitching 3 to Breach to
Yeah.
cast another Lightning Bolt.
My question is, I think we might be countering the stuff we're breaching for. Oh, we're gonna use binding to steal the breach. And it looks like if I was Luke, I would try to replay a second bolt, but it looks like we have all the pieces of interaction here to stop them.
Mm-hmm. George also gets 2 more draws off the Up the Beanstalk on the Leyline trigger, off the Leyline
Yeah.
cast as well.
I think the beanstalk triggering on leyline binding is my personal favorite of like these are 2 good things that two good tastes that taste better together, right?
Absolutely. I think these 2 cards, especially Leyline Binding, really good on its own. It impacted and made better by the beans.
And it is alongside the other 2 good tastes that taste good together of Omnath and the One Ring,
Mm-hmm.
just gaining you life to gain you more cards, as a third beans has entered the chat.
Mm-hmm. George assembling all the pieces here. He's got his Omnath, he's got this ring, 3 up the beanstalks, and a Leyline Binding.
George, I believe, has 7 cards in hand versus Luke's 1 Terminate and their card off the top for turn.
Mm-hmm. Checking for time in round real quick there. Let's check ourselves. We got about 12 minutes left in the round, give or take, for some coverage time.
It's important when you have this burn style strategy that you're trying to be aggressive, is it's getting closer and closer to this game being out of reach for you. So it's important to check time just to see if it's worth grinding through the engine you're being subjected to, as this Terminate is trying to take out Omnath.
Maybe get some value on this fetch land before it dies here,
Yeah.
or
We're gonna
potentially just fetching up some interactive.
Yeah, we're fetching up this Shockland, so we're gonna gain 1 life overall, and it looks like a Veil of Summer out of the board too. There was a time where George's green splash was only for Endurances and Veil of Summers.
Mm-hmm.
Being pushed back to green by Up the Beanstalk is a perfect excuse to play Veil of Summer, which is an unbelievable Magic card.
Right, I would say green is probably the color that they use the least in these decks, right? It's just like sort
Yeah.
of the sideboardy cards. Up the Beanstalk running in your main board gives you more reason to perhaps include more green cards.
Right. that incentivizes George to have more green sources and search up more green sources, which then, when you're already incentivized to have them, why wouldn't you then also have Veil of Summer to counteract? As we see, the Knuckles there for the game ending. But, the most popular deck in the format right now is that those Rakdos Evokes or Murktides or these controlling-based strategies, all of which Veil of Summer is an incredible interactive piece for you. So
I want to see if we can potentially see if George will come back on stream against maybe a faster deck and see how his deck stacks up then. With against a mid-range deck, I feel like he has the edge on because maybe they just they take a little bit longer to kill him than a traditional scam deck. While we're waiting to get round 2 features though, we're going to do a quick couple of ads here. We're going to take a look at our weekly schedule. Tonight is Wednesday, so we have Modern. Tomorrow will be Pokemon, which we will be streaming, so check out the stream for that. We got fantastic commentators and very skillful players. We also have Commander. On Friday will be the release of Wilds of Eldraine. Pre-release was last weekend. Release is this Friday. We already have singles up on our website. Go order there. We will have our F&M Legacy, as well as our One Piece. OP04 Kingdoms of Intrigue releases next Friday, so be sure to get your pre-orders in on the website as well. Saturday League for Digimon, as well as Monday League for Digimon, and our Commander Night. Wrapping up on Tuesday is Pioneer, One Piece, and now Lorcana as well. Big fan of that game. You should check it out as well. We have starters available in store for that. In the meantime, though, we're going to go pick our round 2 features. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned.
Bye.
Welcome back, folks. We're in round 2 of 4 for Wednesday Night Modern here at the Nerd Rage Gaming storefront. Burn won and didn't get paired against George, but they did get paired against David and Scam. A rematch of last week's match. Very excited to have him back. David is rocking one brand new card in his deck. Not Dead After All, another Wilds of Eldraine card, which is a strict upgrade of the Undying effects in his deck. It now creates an enchantment aura, the Wicked Enchantment, which will drain their ping their opponent for 1 when it goes into the graveyard.
Yeah, I know Adam has made 2 changes to his deck, and David has made 6. So David is playing the 4 Not Dead After Alls in 2 Undying Evil, the OG of these effects. And Adam has updated his Searing Blazes to Full Art Searing Blazes.
Oh, cool. Nice. All right, a group down on the field there. We'll take a Boros Charm and the new card, Not Dead After All, and there is that new roll token.
So the Wicked token, as he was explained, has that when it goes away, they take 1 damage. And now, because it's a +1/+1 from the enchantment, as opposed to a +1/+1 counter, we've gone back to the original, which is Undying Evil, which straight up gives the card the Undying effect, which says when it dies, it comes back with a 1/1 counter. But what's important is Undying Evil brings it back untapped. But it could only do so if the card doesn't already have a 1/1 counter. So when the old strategies, everything was giving counters, so Undying Evil typically would not be able to trigger at all because it would already see a 1/1 counter. Now that we have the Wicked roll instead of the counter, when it goes to Undying, it does not see a counter, allowing it to Undying. And like we said, instead of it coming back tapped, it comes back untapped, which I imagine will come up a non-zero amount of the time, but when it does, it's going to be really important.
A dashed Ragavan after the turn 1 grew from David there will hit a land and get him a token. A deck that might not have really needed any more upgrades. Scam already very relevant in the metagame. It got played today by Nathan Stewart in the Modern Super League
today with it.
Did work against the sort of more fun decks that the other players seem to bring. We got, what was there? Tron, Gifts Ungiven, and Living End, right?
Right, all played up against the champion, just playing Scam and just putting it away. Even doing a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge on the Super League stream of the deck being called Rakdos Scam with Scam crossed out and Evoke written there.
Right. People have gone back and forth. I know for the Pro Tour,
It's
think
the Wizards training.
Yeah, they wanted a maybe a little more friendly sort of name for the deck, and Rakdos Evoke a little more accurate. Although kind of going against the general sort of naming. Everyone has always loved fun names for decks, right? Like, you know, when I go and see what the Legacy guys are playing, they're playing decks like Dead Man's Ale, and I'm like, what is this?
You can only There are only 3 guarantees in life: death, taxes, and a mono white deck. Um,
Adam gonna continue to play out some burn spells here. I believe a Searing Blaze. No, that's a Goblin Guide. I'm so sorry.
it's okay.
That is a full creature, not it's a shock on a
Yeah.
stick.
And a part of this current movement, as we see this Goblin Guide eating a lightning bolt, if you ever played an event on MTG Melee, which is becoming the more premier place to play online tournaments with an online support system, is it'll ask you what colors are your deck, and then what's the one word that describes your deck, right? I am playing Boros, Burn. I am playing Rakdos, Evoke. I am playing Green, Tron. So in that mold, as we see Adam playing Seal of Fire, this is where the
David playing a Seal of Fire.
Right.
Ragavan grabbing it off the top, and David going, "I'll take that for myself, thank you."
Right, but calling the deck Rakdos Evoke, which comes from that model, right? Color, one word to describe the deck.
I think it's a pretty good way to describe a deck. It's definitely more helpful for newer players. I think Scam, doesn't really tell you anything. It is
That's the
what more
important part.
people. It is honestly what more people recognize, though, right? That is
And
the
yes.
generally agreed upon name for the deck.
And the concept overall fits Bowmaster, Dothy, the Feign Death effects, the Pitch Elementals, just Ragavan, right? All these cards that by themselves win games. The deck overall has just creates that feeling. As we see, there's a flurry of Lava Spike, Suspend, Burn spell, as shockingly the Burn player is at the lower life total right now.
I was gonna note that as well. Yeah, David's been pushing this Ragavan damage to good effect.
And even just dealing with the Goblin Guides, just using a couple of their removal spells to deal with the onslaught of creatures from Adam, might just cast this Lava Spike.
Yeah, he's got a Lava Spike and a Seal of Fire. Would put Adam to 1.
We're going down to 3.
Yeah.
The Spike has been spoked. And then gets pushed under the Dothy, allowing us access to this final Lava Spike.
Adam looking to be in a rough place here with just a land in hand. I don't think he's got any draws here. This Riftbolt will come off Suspend, but that's not nearly enough damage to take him home.
It's got to take out this Dothy or else we die, right?
Indeed it does.
But it's like, look at me, I'm the burn deck now. As David's own bolts have paired up alongside Adam's burn spells. This Riftbolt having to clean up. Correct that the burn spell will go into the void.
Yeah. And a Goblin Guide will stay back on blocking duty.
As we know, David has that Ragavan prepared for dashing.
However, I think the Seal of Fire might just clean it up anyway.
Right, and then if the Ragavan finds any of Adam's burn spells, that might just put the game away.
Oh, but a Fury will take care of it as well. But then David not having any mana to dash out this Ragavan, just going to sit for now.
And the last card in Adam's hand is a Sacred Foundry.
Monastery Swift Spear down on the field there. On blocking duty again, however.
If we can use a Seal of Fire, kill the Swift Spear, and then just get him a Bad Fury.
And there you go. Oh.
Domya.
Instead, we're gonna opt to do that last point of damage with an Orcish Bowmaster there. So David will take game 1 against Adam. While players are in sideboards, we'll take a quick look at Adam's deck list here, which he has submitted.
I do not remember Scam being the burn killer, but David just puts in work with this Scam deck against burn, just getting games that you would not expect just looking at opening hands, but just pairing their own burn alongside taking Adam's burn and Adam's creatures away from them. They finished this game against burn at 14 life for themselves.
That's crazy. Honestly, the grief took some spells out of their hand. The Ragavan also sort of thinning the top of their deck as well. I mean, you're gonna hit burn spells eventually, right? So you can't quite think along those lines. But it did seem to leave Adam with only lands in his hand, coincidentally.
Right, and Adam even used their own burn spells to deal with David's grief. So a lot of the cards David was playing ate up all the burn spells, forcing Adam to be in a controlling role in a deck that normally isn't put in that position.
As players are shuffling up here, I believe we're about to get his deck list as well. Adam and David notably did play against I don't know if they played against each other, but did both top 8 the same Mundelein event back in October, I believe, of last year. Adam, at one of his first ever NRG events, no-sir'd the finals, took down Hammer. and is still on Burn, his favorite deck to play, has made some changes, has tried Pioneer Burn as well, sort of Blood Burn as he's coined
Bloodburn.
it, but really prefers Modern Burn as it does give you access to three damage spells, right? So let's take a quick look at his sideboard here. He's got 3 Path to Exiles, 2 Deflecting Palms, 3 Smash to Smithereens, 4 Exquisite Firecrafts, 1 Wear Tear, and 2 Roiling Vortexes.
Path to Exiles, I think we saw them bring in last time.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not all 3 of these, but 1 or 2 to deal with a big Fury or big Grief. And then we're really looking at the Roiling Vortexes to beat back against these free spells that the deck is trying to play, and possibly even these Deflecting Palms. If you can't Path the Fury, you might as well palm it back for 8. And you have to always remember when you are playing this burn-based strategy to never take away too much of your own burn for a card like Path, but having just a little bit here and there might allow them to be set up to try to steal 2 games off this scam deck.
Sure, yeah. Usually a burn deck is looking to go into sideboards up a game. Unfortunately, Adam will be on the play, which is a position that will benefit him, but he is down a game, so he's got to obviously win out to take down this match against Scam.
And a really important interaction with the Deflecting Palm is it always does the next time the source would deal damage.
Mm-hmm.
So like a double strike like Fury, as I had just said, wouldn't be the 8 damage. It would be 4 that gets palmed back and then 4 that came through normally. So that's a very important part to remember for this interaction.
All right, and we'll get back into game 2 here as players draw up to 7.
If I was David, I would imagine that they most likely have a couple chalices in their sideboard. It's pretty stock nowadays for these Rakdos decks to have those as answers for the Living End and Rhino strategies. But even in a matchup like this, allowing you to put it on 1 shuts down a lot of the burn stuff. But we've still seen Adam win through their deck being 2s and 3s to make up that difference.
Absolutely. Searing Blazes, Boros Charms,
and then
Exquisite.
Skewer, Exquisites, all these stuff are much bigger.
Right. Skewer, nice that you can cast it for 1, which is what those Sealifiers are in there for, to trigger Spectacle, but the card as written is a 3 mana spell.
And a part of the reason why Adam has these Sealifiers is when playing up against a Grief matchup, it allows him to play the Seal out, and then when they try to Undying Effect, you can pop the Seal to deal the 2 damage to get the Grief off the table. So with Adam being on the play, he's on the hunt for that to find a way. And when you play Seal, it puts it down into play, so it's not in your hand for them to be able to take it from you. So that's, and I see David did draw a Chalice.
Yeah, he has gone to a mulligan, though, so he will put 1 card back, but seeing a Chalice in his hand seems like a pretty good hand to keep. We're going to start off with a Suspended Rift Bolt from Adam.
I like Suspended Rift Bolt as well, because if David does go for a Grief, Scam Grief, the Bolt off Suspend could kill that as well. So it's really interesting to see the points of interaction that allows the way Adam has built Burn to be geared to try to play this matchup. So it's interesting to see that David's taken this matchup down the past couple of times we've seen it, while Adam is even making concessions in their deck building to try to counteract this Scam deck.
On turn 2, we're going to play a different art, Monastery Swift Spirit, and suspend another also different art, Rift Bolt, as well.
Don't let Adam hear us.
He likes his mismatched cards for sure. He likes keeping us on our toes, making sure that we know all the different iterations of each card in his deck.
He likes us pointing it out. That's
sure,
their favorite part.
I think so. And David will naturally play a Chalice on 1. Any spells that Adam attempts to cast with mana value 1 will be countered.
But we see, Adam already got their Swift Spear out. The Rift Bolt's a 3, so already allowing us to start playing through this, getting 1 prowess trigger on the Swift Spear. We're cycling already.
And David down to a lower life total than he got to at all last game. Already at 13, now down to 11 off a prowess trigger on the Swift Spear.
Interesting here that Adam drew Seal of Fire, played our mountain, but didn't play out our seal, which makes me believe that the cards that I can't see towards the back of the hand, I think the far back is a full art Lightning Bolt.
Adam, a notorious card flicker, makes it a little bit hard for us to.
There's a reason I'm not out there, because you wouldn't be able to see a single card.
Yeah. Burn players got to go fast in every aspect of their life. They got a lot of actions per minute APM. Is that like the StarCraft term for it?
Sure, StarCraft enjoyers sound off in the chat if we know what we're talking about or not. Oh, Adam. Yeah, I think importantly, it seemed like
there's
we
the seal now.
Yeah, and the seal's coming. I think even though we could have played the... Oh, no, it's countered by the Chalice. Smart.
Oh, goodness.
Adam, I think, checking to see if the Chalice is going to lock us. David immediately did remember. Great work, great work. which locks up.
We forgot about it for a second, so you always got to make sure that your opponent remembers.
It's so difficult. So when you're playing,
Yeah.
you're always so dialed in, right? To
Mhm.
exactly what your plan is and how your opponent's trying to stop you. When we're outsiders looking in, we're trying to enjoy everything, trying to check both sides, and I completely just glaringly missed it.
Absolutely. It happens to the best of us. Fortunately, David's played this deck a couple of times and does remember.
David is so used to resolving Seasoned Pyromancer that he discarded 2 cards to his Fable and put an Elemental token into play. Oh my goodness, David.
Oh, wow. That is a crazy muscle memory. Oops, right there.
But we discarded Not Dead After All, which, if I'm Adam, says we're either flooded on these effects or we don't have something we're looking to do the Undying to, and pitch to Marsh Flats, which means David's not in the need for more lands. But
a castle lock point for land for turn.
As we said, David on stream has won many a games off that top deck Seasoned Pyromancer, exactly the right moment. He has told me that he's on the full 4 Fables now, like everyone's doing, but they missed.
Was he fighting it for a bit?
Oh yeah, because he loves those Pyromancers.
Yeah, I love them too. I love seeing them come down. They've been pretty impactful in the games we've seen them played.
It's just so risky in face of this card here, Orcish Bowmaster. Oh. It looks like we used the Goblin Shaman to block, paired up with Orcish Bowmaster to take care of this monster with Spear.
Right, the 1 damage plus the 1/1 Orc army will take care of that 2 toughness Monastery Swift Spear.
Yeah, and it's important to know that, yes, there's the Chalice in play, but Adam can still cast his spells to trigger prowess. So some of your cards, though they're not their true functionality, do still kind of read as 1 mana plus 1 damage, which is more than they say when they're locked under Chalice.
Absolutely, and every point of damage counts in a burn deck.
Yes, and what I wonder is, I think last time we saw David brought in these Chalices and Adam brought in their Smash to Smithereens. So the question is did we bring them in again? Because there are 2, so they're not locked under the Chalice right now. So are they in there? Are they something we're digging towards? Oh, I haven't yet got to Fable copy my own Bowmaster. That sounds really nice.
Ooh, yeah.
You can just start churning how big that army gets while pinging for 1.
I walked by a commander table the other day and saw Dakota sitting with a 2020 Orc army on his side of the field.
Was it an Echostar deck?
It was not. No, that's what I play. He plays Kenrith.
Oh, wow.
Oh, sure. Flash in against a Time Spiral.
Just flash in against
or Time Twister.
No big deal.
Yeah, either way.
And Adam, again, suspending this Rift Bolt, a card that they can play through the Chalice, is so very important here.
You spend 1 mana to suspend it. That doesn't interact with Chalice at all. On the cast, it will just check that number in the corner. David playing a Guild Kit Swamp is land for turn. I think flooding out a little bit. He's played a lot of lands. I think 1 every single turn. Right? Just going to hard cat.
Oh, we've done it again.
Oh, man.
David is now 2 for 2 playing their own Ragavans in a Chalice.
Oh, man. You'll love to see it happen because, they're good-natured players, right?
Not only did it happen last week, before the event started today, David walked... Yeah, I see you, David. David walked up to me and he was like, hey, I know I did this on camera last week. Like, I was like, no, it's no problem. Yeah. Here we are once again.
It's all good. We're here to have some fun, and both of these players clearly are having fun. We love to see some fun magic. It's still good magic, too, in my opinion.
A thing that might be also really important to know in the moving forward, I'll have to check with our judge that's out there. There's been recent changes to the rules that came out this morning.
Yeah,
and
there's
there's one about playing around your own Chalice. So I'm gonna have to check with them between rounds. We may have to talk about this with our judge staff at large and maybe let David know. I believe, please don't quote me, I have to check still.
You can back it up now,
I think
right?
You can.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, yeah.
So that'll be an important thing for us to, I'll try to check on that between, I might even, if we go to a game 3, I might check between games. Just
sure. I went to go read it this morning because I was like, oh, this is really good information to have. It's a dense read for sure. There's a reason why I'm not a Magic judge, and I relearned that lesson again this morning when I went to go try and read that article.
One of my Twitter things that I follow is Raph Spuden, Elliot Raph, who I believe is an L3 judge.
Yes, he is.
What they did was not only put out the document, but say, here are the big changes, like a quick TLDR on the rules changes, which I really appreciated just as a player and aspiring judge, just checking that stuff out. How is the game changing?
Adam playing that Skewer the Critics we were talking about earlier is just a 3 mana, 3 damage spell that does get past that Chalice again. David gonna crash in for 3 damage here, putting Adam to 12 on a 4-turn clock.
Adam's sitting on Goblin Guide and I believe another 1 mana burn and Lava Spike in hand. So a hand that currently can't play through Chalice, but a deck that still can. That if we can find a few bolts, we can still race this Bowmaster.
I saw David go for something and then sat back, maybe trying to play a little bit more deliberate now that he has had a couple of missteps this game.
And they do have a Castle Lockthwain, so David has to walk the thin line of, is my hand bad enough that I'm willing to bolt myself to draw new cards, which I don't think we're at that point of the game
Oh,
yet.
gosh.
As Adam drew either looks like another land.
Yeah, Theros Beyond Death Mountain this time.
And we see thinking, debating, tied it up here.
Excuse me, I mix up the stats on Orcish Bowmaster all the time. I just see 2 mana, gotta be 2 power. It's only got 1 power. It would be way better at 2 power.
And the good thing is it's a 1/1, so Bowmasters interact with other Bowmasters.
Right.
So thankfully the good card checks itself as opposed to having to find, other cards that help check it alongside it.
Unfortunately, Adam doesn't have any of his Sunbake cannons, which could help him draw here. Gonna dash out, counter.
What's happening? What's happening?
Are we building up Storm? Are we pitching so we can get the Lockthwain without taking damage? I believe so.
Wow,
yes.
David.
Wow. Gonna
Genius.
throw 3 spells into the graveyard so he only takes 1 damage off his Castle Lockthwain trigger there.
I'm impressed. I think
I like that sequencing a lot.
Absolutely.
I think throwing those spells away is smart.
Yeah, they're not going to get cast. And Adam's already pretty locked down by this.
Yeah.
That, you're just trying to put the game away. Like right now, David has him on a 3-turn clock and doesn't have the out of like drawing their own bolts because their own bolts are locked on our Chalice. So we are neck and neck right now. And now David is in the scenario where notice the card they drew off the castle, they also didn't cast. Now they're up to 2 cards in hand again. So it looks like we're tapping the castle early. Oh, this increases the clock. 1 damage plus a bigger army is now 3 damage.
So Adam is dead next turn, sans any interaction.
Yeah, and
Fury, what might as well.
Yeah, those 2 cards that came off that interaction were very, very good for David.
Yeah, a couple of heaters here.
Adam definitely had a window if their top decks were a little better, but now there's no reason not to do this fetch. They are right on the edge of things. We're most likely going to see a flurry of burn spells countered by Chalice and then a concession. If I had to guess, that's what we're about to see is Adam's going to drop all the burn spells on the table. Say, I could have killed you, I swear. And then pack it up.
Absolutely.
Oh, and I didn't even notice Adam did get the fancy Unfinity Sacred Foundry, so a little extra spice going in this burn deck as well. Against David, who also has the Unfinity Blood Crypts alongside the Guild Kit Swamps. People who love their decks.
Yeah, David has spent a lot of time playing Scam. It's his favorite deck to play. I think the only deck he plays, but...
Yeah, we were trying to remember. We think this is the only deck we've ever seen. Oh, I was right. Adam put all 5 1-mana spells on the table alongside their mountain. Says, I swear I could have got you.
Said, curse you, Chalice of the Void. All right, shaking his fist there. We'll head into our backup match, though. We got a good one for you here. We got Yawgmoth run by Danny and Mike on Scape Shift. Looks like we're in game 2 here. Mike is up. And it's Danny's turn casting a Necromentia.
This is a very well-timed Necromentia. We are most likely either targeting Scape Shift the spell or Valakut, as you can name anything with this Necro. I recommend naming the Valakut because it turns off both Hardcat, it's Primeval Titan is our choice here. Interesting.
It looks
already
like
a Valakut in play.
Yes,
so
that's what I was going to say.
Yeah, I was so zeroed in because it eliminates all of the possible death possibilities. Have you ever done Scape Shift math before?
No, I've seen my opponents do it a lot. I tried to do it once and said, I don't think this is the deck for me.
So Scape Shift math piece number 1 is typically you need 7 lands in play and your opponent at 18 or less life. That means off 7, you get a Valakut and 6 mountains. Each are a bolt, and that deals 18 damage. The math has then been changed by Dryad of the Elysian Grove.
Right.
Making all lands all types. Valakut itself is now a mountain. So now you can do the Scape Shift on 6 mana sources, and then you could grab Valakut, 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 and 3 mountains, and then just obliterate your opponent's life total. So this Dryad already being in play, and now backed up by this One Ring. we're seeing a lot of lands and a lot of permanents on the left, and just some green-black sources on the right.
And each Valakut trigger is 3 damage, I believe.
Yes, so we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 mountains currently in play alongside. And Valakut. So we're already in Valakut territory because we have the Dryad.
Yeah, Mike used that to clean up the Stranglerootgeist on Danny's side of the field, but Danny's gonna play 2 Young Wolves and an Orcish Bowmaster. Gonna get rid of the little 1/1 that Mike has.
Yeah, and we're responding to this ring trigger as well, so we're gonna get another ping here. Can't go upstairs because of the ring itself. The cleanest interaction with Bowmaster is when you can't target your opponent. If you target the Orc army itself, it'll deal a damage but gain a counter, all as the same ability resolving. And then
you check.
Then it's a 2/2 with 1 point of damage on it. So if you can't go anywhere and you don't want to shoot yourself, if you shoot the Orc army and you feel safe in that moment, that's a spot that you can target to be able to keep everything.
Land for turn will use the Valakut damage to take care of the Bowmaster.
Yeah. It's interesting. If I was Mike, I think I would have activated the ring first because our fetch lands are 2 bolts, whereas our land drop here in a Cinderglade is only 1 single bolt.
He does have a Sakura Tribe Elder in hand, which would be another
Oh, and we have this Explorer.
And an Explorer. We're going to get a good number of Valakut triggers here. Every single land is a bolt, is 3 damage to send at any one of the creatures or at Danny.
Yeah, we're approaching the phase of the game where I don't think I'm throwing anything at this Orc army or these Young Wolves. I'm trying to go upstairs currently 3, 6, 9, 12, 15, 5 times. I'm trying to go upstairs 5 times.
Yeah, and Mike's sitting at a very comfy 14 life. Young Wolves, what are the stats on those?
They're 1/1s before they Undying, but it is important to know that we're a Yawgmoth away from starting to go wild.
Sure, yeah, but Yawgmoth, if you're looping that, does do a damage every time, so might get a little risky for Danny staring at this Valakut here. Ren and 6 will ping the Young Wolf, bring it back.
We are a green source and a Yawgmoth away from being able to possibly kill Mike. But that's why we're using our land alongside our Ren to take a Young Wolf off the table. Because if Danny was able to play Yawgmoth and a land, we would have had Young Wolf, Orc Army, Yawgmoth, and a land, which would allow us to cord for 2, which is Blood Artist and the kill condition. So Mike, understanding exactly where the choke points are in the Yawgmoth deck, used 2 of their points of interaction to remove Young Wolf and remove that possibility. And like you were saying, we even have the Sakura Tribal that we haven't used yet. We have our Renin 6 with a land available in the graveyard. We're getting very, very close to just a flurry of burn spell.
And Dryad, I don't believe, gives you an extra land drop. It
does.
Oh, it does. Okay.
Yeah. It needed 2 lines of text. You get both an extra land drop and all lands are all types. You know, a part of it being that 4 card and 4 of engine in Amulet alongside the Escape Shift deck, right? Using both of those pieces to put the engine fully together.
It's fun now that I've played Modern for a few years at this point. Sorry, did you want to talk about what's happening here?
We found the in our graveyard already. We got our fetch land, which is equal to 2 bolts. We're casting the card Wish, which allows you to play a card from your sideboard this turn. Most likely going to be Escape Shift and just put this game away before anything else happens. We see there's the 3. Looks like there's 4.
Oh, Danny puts his head in his hands. Yeah. Knucks it up there.
Most likely just going to, always, I recommend, once an opponent has said, like, okay, I've conceded, that is the game being over. But I do like to normally be like, I can prove you the condition before you like to, formally concede. Here is the Escape Shift. So.
I think that is good practice. As I was saying before, I really do like, now that I've played Modern for a few years, I was playing against Amulet Titan decks for, since my inception as a Modern player. Yeah, that's what I was getting beat up when I first started. And then, Dryad came out, Mycosynth Gardens came out. This deck has been getting additions, and it's cool to see decks that have been part of the format for a while get new additions and grow.
Yeah. And not only, Titan continue to persist through everything, but this Escape Shift deck making a returning. This deck hasn't seen, true mainstay play in a while, but the One Ring and then the reprinting of Dryad.
Right, the One Ring, of course, forgot to add as well. Ren and 6 even. I didn't have that when I first started playing.
This is a deck that's slowly picked up little pieces and has found that If you put them all together, plus the the big punch of Primeval Titan and Scape Shift, just allows this deck to put the game away.
Yeah, and if you're looking to pick up any of these pieces for yourself, why don't you head on over to nerdragegaming.com. We have a fantastic singles selection for you there. You can select for in-store pickup or ship anywhere countrywide. We also have a fantastic loyalty program. The more you spend, the more you save. As soon as your first purchase, you get 1% back, all the way up to 10% back with each purchase with cumulative credit spent on the site. We do have Wilds of Eldraine cards up on our site now, and we are listing new cards every day. If you see one that we don't have in stock, add it to your wish list and get notified right away with no obligation to pay as soon as that card is listed. And we just had someone in store today buy up some copies of Up the Beanstalk, so we'll be trying to get some more up for you there. We had the Beans deck on last round, so go check us out on nerdragegaming.com. With that, that was both of our features for this round. We're going to go pick round 3 features. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be right back.
See you soon.
Welcome back, folks. We're in round 3 of 4 here for Wednesday night. Modern players are rolling up. We got Randall on Living End and Michael on Murktide. Welcome back. Remember to hit that follow button. We'll be live every Wednesday, as well as players draw up here. Living End and Murktide very high up on the Menguchi tier list for Modern. What do you think is favored in this matchup?
The deck with Counterspell in it.
That's a really good point. Yeah, Living End is a hard deck to... it is hard pressed to win if they can't cast their Cascade spells, for sure. So I think whoever on the play is going to be very notable. Yeah, so Michael can hold up Spell Pierce and that kind of stuff here.
Yeah, Michael is playing Counterspell, Archmage's Charm, Force of Negation, Leyline Binding, Murktides, Orcish Bowmaster. I've never got to Bowmaster against a cycling deck, but I can imagine that's got to be nice.
Wait, how many colors is...
Michael's on 4 color Murktide. He was on it last week.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. There's the Hollow Fountain.
Yeah, it allows for your bindings to be cheap, but alongside Bolt, Fire Ice, your Counterspell packages, and some black for Bowmasters. Maybe a Thoughtseize or 2, a Push or 2. I can't remember where exactly the black splash is. But it's pretty free once you're trying to search up Triomes and such for your bindings.
Absolutely. I like the additions to Murktide, because I played Murktide for a little bit, and I found, as some people I think do, is that it gets a little boring. Okay. Like, I like getting a big Murktide right, but it's like, I don't know. I wanted a little bit more from the deck, and I would like to try out Michael's deck at some point and maybe see how a 4-color feels versus the standard is it build.
It's more of a tempo-y, kind of flashy style version, and just using Murktide as like your big finisher, but having a lot more mid-game. Where, the Murktide proper usually just goes like spin wheel, interact once, prey on this Murktide. This deck allows kind of a little more middle, as Randall begins their first action by cycling Street Wraith before even playing their land. Starting on Stomping Ground into Grief, I will note that Stomping Ground is by far the worst land in Living End, and one they're only playing because of Oliphant.
Oh, right, because you can fetch it off the mountain cycling.
Right. So it allows your Oliphant to find a green source when you need it, because all of your cyclers cycle for a single blue. So you want all of your mana sources to be a blue mana source. So when Stomping Ground is the land you lead on, that shows that we're most likely leaning on the land cyclers that cycle for a colorless instead of the blue criteria. But starting on a Stomping Ground is still rough for future cycles.
I saw a Leyline Binding in Michael's hand that Randall's now picking through with this Grief. I don't know if you spotted any of the other cards, though.
The one thing I do know is I'm not taking this Leyline Binding. I could not care less. When you are playing Living End, you're trying to get as many bodies into play that the 1-for-1 answer is not the problem. You're looking to take some form of counter magic, but we take binding, so
interesting.
Who knows what I have to say, as we do see Michael does have a beautiful personal favorite Snapcaster Mage art alongside just the binding being taken away, which may make me believe that Randall might be on a hard cast kind of game. Maybe looking at a hand of a lot of 4s and just thinking, maybe I can just play these out this game.
Play the long con.
Yeah, right, absolutely. As we see a second Preordain.
See Expressive Iteration.
And a Pierce, like you were saying, a card that's going to be very important here.
Both on top there. Those are both Two good cards for sure for Michael.
But we have to be careful with keeping both on top because we have a Flooded Strand as our current available land. So if
Mm.
we crack that, we are going to lose that second card that we left there.
And there's one of those land cyclers going to grab a Watery Grave for Randall.
Ooh, I wonder if Randall is playing. There is a version that's a like 4-color living end deck, being played by I believe the MTG's name is Meninone, who's like a big living end player.
Oh, yeah.
Has been playing a 4-color version that plays the Troll of Khazad-dûm, which you see was Randall's land cycler here. Which then they kind of have like a one of each shock mana base, so that they can have a Blood Crypt, a Overgrown Tomb, and a Watery Grave. As we see the Watery Grave allowing you to have searchable swamps off your Troll, and just having bigger early living ends with how powerful the Troll is at a 6/5 super menace. Needs to be blocked by 3 or more creatures.
Oh gosh, yeah, absolutely. Someone's asking in chat while we're watching the 1-1 bracket. We do have a 2-0 matchup on the backup match that is a possibly slower matchup, so hopefully we will be able to tune into that at some point after
Right.
this match wraps up.
And a part of us doing our 4-round event here is we like to try to highlight as many people and decks as we can. The 2-0 bracket full of folks that you've already seen today, so you want to highlight these decks. And 1-1 in any other event is doing great. Like, they're very clearly still in the money here for our event as well. But we wanted to highlight 2 players we have not yet seen before we see all the people that you've already seen, such as the Beans.
Yeah, we got those beans on backup, so stay tuned for that.
Yeah, they're currently being heated up in the background.
George, for the first time in a couple of weeks, didn't get land.
He hasn't been land locked on
That's what I
stream,
was trying to figure out the word for.
and
Yeah.
he hasn't gotten a draw yet. So.
Oh gosh, yeah. Hasn't got a time yet.
The George DeBoer event special is getting like 4 draws. So as we see Michael just setting up their mana here, Murktide, which is interesting to see it played out here before Randall has kind of set up their Cascade and Living End engine. So we might put this big dragon into play and just lose it.
Yeah, absolutely.
But remember, Michael did keep a card off their Preordain, which might have been that Spell Pierce, which they might still be holding up as a basically protection for this Murktide because they'll be able to counter the Living End.
Yeah, and Randall might be smelling the blood in the water here. Is going to pitch 2 more creatures into his graveyard. I think he's looking to set up a Violent Outburst or Shardless Agent cast on his upcoming turn here.
Yeah, absolutely. And these land cyclers do have their pros and cons, right? They allow you to play less lands and set up really well, but a part of it that brings it back a little for you is in this mid game where you just want more raw cards. You're instead land cycling. So instead of getting more action pieces, we're kind of cycling through and just getting more lands, which is the hardest when we're in this like mid game scenario, being on our 2nd or 3rd land cycle. We're just going so deep in our deck, but only finding lands instead of forces or cascaders or any of our like 4 mana threats.
Sure, yeah. The land cycling though, living end decks are typically pretty low in lands.
Yes.
So once you start getting those land cyclers and pulling those lands out of your deck, you're hopefully going to be drawing a little more gas.
Right, and the second land we played was the Watery Grave we found off the first troll. So Randall may have kept a hand of 1 land and 2 land cyclers, which just make up all that difference. The cards you want to draw are your lands, so your land cyclers circumvent that for you.
Shock's down to 12 already. And I think we're going to see a Cascade cast here. Shardless Agent.
Very important, Randall's doing this on their own turn. So if Randall had a Force of Negation, it is not currently available as it is their turn. And it looks like Michael is fetching, most likely hunt for a blue source for our Spell Pierce.
Yep.
As we see cycling through, getting our Steam Vents, getting our 4th color online here. The green of this deck is just to make sure that our Leyline Bindings are fully charged up, and I believe there's no green spells. So
for sure.
Our mana set up for all of our castables at this point.
Maybe there's like a Veil of Summer or something in the side.
I should recommend that card. Is still just incredible.
Yeah. I would love to have it in Pioneer for sure.
Oh, glad it's banned, right?
My Angels deck would love it.
Randall here does still get their 2/2 for the Shardless Agent. But what's really important for Michael is we know that he has a Snapcaster Mage, which means with this open mana, we have Snap for Spell Pierce for the next Living End as well. And we can just kind of ride this 5/5 Murktide that will not take long at all to kill our opponent. And if we have a Lightning Bolt at any time, might be able to put the game away.
Sure thing. We'll see what Randall's able to do on his turn, try and get himself out of this mess. He does have a flyer or two in his deck, right? The Curator
The Curator's a flyer.
flies.
Grief has Menace if you get a Grief down. The Troll, if you can get into play, is that Super Menace.
Sure, I'm thinking of blockers at this point, though,
Oh,
since Randall
sure.
is pretty low.
Yeah, I mean, we can even, if we're main decking Subtleties, if we can get another blue source here, might be able to flash that out.
I saw Randall go to play a land there. I think it might be another Shock, which may...
Is dangerous against
Yeah,
this 5/5.
makes sense why he's hesitant there. Puts him down into one single attack, lethal from this Murktide.
But it might be the type of situation where maybe we do have Shockland and 4-drop blocker, but if our opponent can answer that blocker, then we're done. We're dead in the water. So
Sure.
debating the pros and cons of, you're in your final moments, you don't want it to go wrong.
Randall really in the tank here, trying to figure out how to get himself out of this mess.
Michael calm as a cucumber, 5/5 Murktide and 4 mana.
He's sitting in a pretty comfy spot for sure. All he's got to do is wait for Randall to try and cast some spells, and I think he's probably got some interaction waiting in his hand to deal with it.
And this is where these Murktide strategies like to be. As you see, it looks like a Shockland for this Steam Vent. Now in lethal range of this Murktide, so we need to be very careful. Michael could be holding up Archmage's Charm, Snapcaster for Spell Pierce. We could flash in a Bowmaster. We could flash in a Subtlety. We could get Otawara. Like, there's so many things that could go wrong. 4 mana is a terrifying amount of mana to see on the other side.
And we saw the Snapcaster, so he definitely does have one in hand there.
Yes.
But there are other avenues he could be taking.
Shardless Beads.
Sure thing.
This
Take Michael down to 9, which isn't an insignificant number. Oh.
Bolt. Tick, tick, tick. Getting very,
Take Randall
very
down
close.
to 2 there.
Yeah, this Murktide is now ready to try to put this game away. And making it difficult for Randall to get any more future mana online as well. I get Otawara vibes here.
Yeah.
Because
that's not counterable.
Oh, it is a Subtlety.
It's
We're
just
going to try to go blocking mode. Tap 1,
Just a counter
tap 2.
spell. Oh.
Oh, we're going to
Oh, he's just going to bolt it.
Snap bolt. That's right.
Oh,
we knew about the snap.
man. There it is.
Snapcaster, the ghost of modern past, going to flash in and target this bolt and go upstairs, hopefully dealing those final points of damage. But we have force blue card for the bolt.
Oh, my goodness.
Wow.
So then the Subtlety will indeed resolve.
And the Subtlety will be on blocking duty, going
Alright.
into the bin, taking the damage here. But now Michael Ryan has 2 lethal threats in play.
Either one of these creatures can attack for lethal here. And Randall, just a constant frown on his face in this game. He has really just been thinking hard.
This bolt should be in exile if this game goes on a little longer, and I make sure to get that squared away. But this might be the final moments of the game. So
yeah, you put it in exile, and then when Randall was like holding priority, we put it back just for. But yeah,
interesting. We're cycling Curator instead of casting it.
Just looking for some other kind of out.
Yep.
Oh gosh, and drew the Living End instead of the Cascade spell.
Oh yes, drawing the Living Ends used to just spell certain doom for this deck. Now with the addition of Grief, you at least have something you can do with the Living Ends that you draw. And Randall's deck, as you saw, black sources galore, could actually put a Living End on suspend if they really wanted, but there just was not enough game left there.
No, you need that spell to be cast immediately. No time for suspending there. So Michael will take the first game there against Living End, and Randall, we're going to pull up some deck list here. Neither of these players submitted a deck list. I'll yell at them later for that. But we grab some off of Goldfish, MTG Goldfish, for all your gaming needs. Not sponsored. Hashtag not sponsored. But a stock Living End deck might look like this in the sideboard. A Brazen Borrower, 2 Endurances, 2 Foundation Breakers, 3 Subtleties. We saw a Subtlety in his main deck, but he might have more in his sideboard. 2 Ingot Chewers, an Anger of the Gods, Mystical Disputes, Force of Vigor, and a Blood Moon. Against this 4-color deck, would a Blood Moon be a good include here? Will that affect his own mana base too hard?
So it's really interesting. So the deck now with Generous Ent, you have easy access to your forests, but not the easiest access to your island. So if they feel they can keep,
they're not playing the Lorien revealed in this deck.
Not a creature.
Yeah.
So you might have to prioritize Fetchland finds island, Cycler finds basic, but your opponent may also be able to play around it, playing their own red cards, possibly playing a pile of basics. But cards like Mystical Dispute, really good against the counterspell-based strategy. Endurance, really good against a Murktide Snapcaster deck. You've seen those 2 Graveyard Matters cards. Brazen Borrower, sometimes just the best answer to onboard Graveyard Hate or a big Murktide. So might be something to look at. Or Subtlety, just an answer to Murktide, Snap, and any other threats we might think are on the way.
Absolutely. Do we have a Murktide list to look at? I know his is a little more unique.
Some classic Murktide
Just
sideboarding.
just a sort of classic, yeah. Like you said, just a is it build here. Potential cards that he could be working with would be some Brazen Borrows or Subtlety, like the other deck. Fury, a Jace the Mind Sculptor, Flusterstorm, Spell Snare. Flame of Venor is a cool card. I don't know if you've seen much play with that.
It's good with Snapcaster Mage.
Indeed, it is. We got some Forced Negations, Mystical Dispute, Engineered Explosives, and some Alpine Moons. Alpine Moon is nice in that it doesn't affect your own lands, and it can.
Right.
It's more like the Tron include.
That's the Tron
we
hammer,
we
right?
thought that to great effect last week. Probably not as useful against this Living End deck.
But something like a Flusterstorm is usually like the go-to. Like this is for an anti-Cascade matchup. Because it's hard for them to hold up a single force when you have all these storm copies of it.
A Flusterstorm would be for 3,
Every
right?
3
because
if
of the
you'll-
Cascade plus the Living End plus the Fluster.
Right. So even if nothing else happened that turn, this is 3 individual spells, which is very difficult for like a force or a dispute to try to fight back against. And if this deck has like Furies or something floating around, maybe just something you bring in to just evoke away early to bring back a big Fury if a Living End happens.
Sure, absolutely. As we get back down into the action here, need I remind you to follow? I'm sure you already have, but if you haven't hit that follow button, we are live every single Wednesday with fantastic modern coverage for you. And we appreciate you being here and keeping us company in chat. If you're looking to get into any other TCGs, we do also stream Pokemon on Thursdays. You should check them out. We got some really good commentators over there.
Drawing it up. So we're going to have Living End where they want to be, which is just on the play.
Mm-hmm.
The hardest part is whenever I had played Living End, you always feel like you're hopefully favored in game 1, and you're trying your best just to win a game 2 or game 3 through all the hate, hopefully push like through a cascade, push a counterspell to get things right on. The hardest part is going to be that with this game 1 being taken by the controlling player, it's going to be very difficult post board here.
While players are still shuffling up here, let's just run through one more ad. If you're looking to play one of Magic's fantastic formats in Legacy, we are hosting a Legacy event. We are using some fantastic dual lands as prizing. Come hang out with us on Saturday, September 23rd. It is a $40 entry, 64 player cap, and we are giving away a Sarah's Sanctum as well. So come check that out and win you some dual lands for your Legacy deck. What do you play Legacy at all, Dom?
Red, black, reanimator.
Yeah, you do.
Yeah.
That finger gun. I still need. I need to add the finger guns emoji to the Twitch channel as well. It's in our Discord.
Yeah,
Mr. Sire of Insanity himself.
Yeah. Love that deck to pieces. Might be getting the card Reanimate tattooed pretty soon
Ooh.
too. It's my favorite archetype in Magic. So a deck like Living End, deck like the Awaken Before You Goryo. It's been really difficult to play graveyard strategies in Modern right now. You know, just so many answers that are good against Murktide that also get all this sideways hate. I even tried playing Yawgmoth. Like I love fiddling around with the graveyard in these base interactions, but it's been so hard lately. But the Awaken Before You Goryo allows that ability to play a mid-range deck, answer all the problems, and then 1-2 punch someone, which is not something that's been available. So I'm like really chomping at the bit. I went out there talked to Ray Ray. Like it's so cool as just they're shuffling up. Like I said, I am notorious for getting 9th place with Living End. Like like I said, you try to win game 1. Like it should hopefully be the case that you can just like shove through with people just not having interaction.
Right.
But when you play against counterspell.deck, it gets a lot harder.
Yeah, absolutely. And now Michael's got access to probably some graveyard hate as well. So your job's gonna be even harder because I think just about everyone's got some sort of graveyard hate in their sideboard nowadays. There's a lot of graveyard based decks.
And we see Michael drawing a Nile Spellbomb here after going land, Lorien. Spellbomb, Preordain.
And it looks like if this dice is correct, he's already mulliganed twice.
I believe the die is just left over from last game. I had the same thought because I usually do this practice as well. But I believe Michael had to run off screen real quick. Is back. Looks like we're both. Looks like keeping these 7s. We should be off to the races here in just a moment.
Randall will be on the play for game 2 here.
Starting off with Indatha Triumph. Triumph's incredible for modern day Magic, right? It really helps them set up the land cyclers they have in Generous Ent can find it, and the Troll can find it. just Michael showing you what's what, putting this
Yeah,
into play
just really
immediately.
showing the cards in his hand,
Right.
for lack of a better term there. Putting his cards on the table, rather.
Yeah. But what's important about Randall playing this Triumph on turn 1 is, although they are setting up their mana, it's a turn that they're not cycling, which is always the hardest part. Is you just want to be cycling as much as you possibly can.
Right, now you can dump 2 creatures into the graveyard as opposed to a maximum of 3 before you resolve a Cascade spell on turn
Outside
3.
of if we might get up on a Street Wraith, but we're in a
Sure, right.
situation now
That can
where
speed it up.
using our mana, our only options now is to get at most 2, maybe even a Grief, right? There's all these little corner cases,
Yeah.
but we're at least possibly 1 creature short of our overall whole.
Is that Territorial Kavu? What is this?
What? Hello? It's me? Okay. So
Is that right? Is that a Territorial Kavu?
yes. Is this our sideboard tech for when our opponent brings in Graveyard Hate? We just pivot into a 5/5 that we can cascade into?
Interesting. All right, we're going to pull this card up on the screen for y'all. I have seen it in like a
this is
domain
so
deck
smart.
before. I've never seen a Living End player play it, though.
Your opponent's deck is incentivized to bring in Graveyard Hate and take out 1-for-1 removal. When that's the case, how about we just bring in a 5/5?
Seems pretty good. Here's the card for you. Let me read it
Wow.
for y'all. It does have domain, so that's where I've seen it. Its power and toughness are equal to the number of basic land types among lands that you control.
Full
Whenever
5.
it attacks, you can choose either discard a card and draw a card, or you can exile up to a target card from a graveyard, which does seem good once you do cast that Living
Yeah.
End to sort of get rid of the threats that your opponent would be bringing back. And a
Second
second one.
Kavu. Holy
Alrighty.
cow. Everyone, you are seeing one of my
Yeah, just go. We're going for Kavu beats.
one of my favorite things in Magic is a sideboard juke, right? Understanding exactly the scenario you're in, what your opponents would do, and how you can respond. And we have leveled up the level up to you have no removal, you have all this. You bring in Nile Spellbomb, I bring in 5/5s.
I'm trying to think. There was this one deck we were talking about once where we were like, there was this deck that we were talking about, and we were like, we should instead dedicate our whole 15-card sideboard to just completely changing our main plan. I forget what deck it was, though, and it's going to kill me. I'm going to wake
I've thought
up.
about it with Living End, but usually it's them changing into like a subtlety endurance, like flash style strategy. Instead, we've just changed over into at least 4 aggressive threats, possibly even more. I can imagine we might also bring in Scion of Draco, a big 12 mana card.
Yeah,
so
another domain card as well.
that you could bypass on your cascades and not have to worry about. If we're playing Living End sideboard into 5-color domain, that is so cool.
Yeah, I love it. Michael, if he fetch and shocks here, would put him at lethal against these Kavus. So he's just going to get a basic,
get
looks
this
like,
basic.
just down to 11.
Wow. This is going to make Michael rethink everything when sideboarding for game 3, which allows Randall to possibly juke back to the Living End plan, depending on if Michael then brings all their bindings back in.
Right, yeah. If oh gosh, yeah. We're just checking life totals here. They are correct at 11. We're going to double check. They're going to double check rather.
Wowzers. I'm
You really like it?
I'm thrown back. It's so cool. And if Randall draws any of their Cascaders, they cascade into more Territorial Kavus.
Someone in chat saying that Randall might have forgotten his attack trigger on the Kavu.
They're so excited to have a 5/5, they didn't even care to use the ability, right? It's just, and we're backing it up with force.
Oh gosh, yeah. Michael tried to play it to Fairy there, and it got countered immediately.
I'm interested to see, because we may be on our way to a game 3, what other sideboard cards come in alongside these Kavus. Like, what are the additional pieces that are allowing us to push through?
There's a Shardless Agent. All right.
I have a feeling it's going to hit a third Kavu.
and Michael says, I think that's enough. I think we can just go to a game 3 here. We'll see if these players reach for their sideboards again or just shuffle back up.
So if I'm Randall, you immediately grab your 15 and slam them in front of your deck. Do not give your opponent information if you're juking back or not. And then make your sideboarding decisions. If you start spraying out a couple in front of you and swapping and changing.
You just, oh, sorry.
Yeah,
anyway.
You just have to be very, very careful. You know, this difference between like playing online or playing in person is right here in the sideboarding stage. You can sometimes give away info, specifically when you're on a sideboard juke plan.
Yeah.
If you're just like, these are 3 cards I'm bringing against Scam, these are 3 I take out, they're not going to think anything. But if Randall goes back in and puts like 8 cards down and picks up 8 new ones, that's going to tell a lot. But what I would love to do is go grab 8 cards, put them down and put 8 sideboard cards, and then pick up the cards back into your deck anyways. There's a lot of weirdness that you could do here, but it looks like Randall might be swapping 1, maybe 2 cards. I wonder if they're like gemstone mines or something.
Sure, just like a play versus draw sort of
Yeah.
sideboard here. It looks like Michael's doing the same, just a
Right.
couple cards as well.
But Michael is most likely bringing back in Prismatic Ending, Leyline Binding,
Yeah.
something that they had taken out.
Some
Worried
creature,
about these
some
Kabus.
spot removal instead of the graveyard hate.
I bet they went in, took those like 2 Nile spell bombs they brought in, and swapped them out for Leyline Binding or something.
Mm-hmm.
Because I would be terrified that these Kabus are coming for me and coming for me quick. Such a cool idea. Randall, shout out if it's your idea. If you got it from someone on the interwebs, I gotta know who it is. What a cool idea.
He's here every week. I've been begging these players to submit their deck list just so we can get a look into their exact deck building.
Randall might be hiding their RCQ tech.
Oh, maybe. That's a really good point, too.
I mean, I like full respect to that. Modern RCQ season begins this Saturday.
Mm-hmm.
This is, might be the last chance that these players have to kind of test stuff out before, playing for the big stakes in a lot of people's favorite format. Randall may have just found some real good spice. You only need to spike 1.
Yeah, speaking of modern RCQs, the Nerd Rage Gaming Series will be back in October in Indianapolis. If you're looking to play some modern, head on over to our team trial. It's going to be triple modern. Every seat can play the same deck. Any seat can play a different deck. You could be Team Living End. You could play 3 different versions of Living End. It's going to be a lot of fun. We also have our Pioneer Showdown as well. Trying to pull up that asset right now. I'm so sorry we don't got it, but it's going to be October 14th and 15th. It is a double 10K weekend as well. Lots of good money to be given out there. Lots of good games to be had. If you don't want to play the main event or you scrub out, we got some fantastic side events for you as well. You can win some oversized cards, some uncut sheets, some sealed product as well. And we will have some Magic artists there as well. I believe it's Jeff Lobenstein and RK Post.
Hey, Viva, I'd like to play a quick game.
Mm-hmm.
Living End, in its current state, is a red, green, blue base deck. What 3 colors do you believe original Living End was? You can go wild with it.
Okay, so Living End is a black card, so I'm gonna guess black.
Okay, sweet, good start.
I'm so nervous. I don't want to
It's
be
okay.
wrong.
The other 2 colors are currently in Living End.
I don't know why my immediate thought went to Iona as like that's like I think a little bit too
You're
crazy.
thinking of old school gifts I'm giving. They were slamming Ionas into play.
Yeah, let's go Grixis. I don't know, black, blue, red.
Ooh, we're very close. The original was Jund in a green, red, black version that used really bad cyclers.
Yeah.
The creatures were like 3/3s and 3/4s and Fulminator mages. Like an Avalanche Riders. Like it was kind of like an LD, bring them back, blow up the rest sort of strategy. But the creatures were so tiny that when you brought them back, this was before Grief. This was before Shardless Agent. You were playing Demonic Dread, which says target creature can't block Cascade.
Ooh,
that sometimes you couldn't even cast because they didn't have a creature.
Oh, because you have to have a
Right.
legal target first? Oh,
So
gosh.
they used to play Beast Within as a land destruction that makes a 3/3, so that there'd be a creature that you could at least target with your Demonic Dread to be able to flip through.
That's so crazy.
And so the deck was very, very different. This was like 10 years ago. And I was still playing Living End back then.
Yeah.
It was like
How long have you been playing Modern for?
like 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
But back then the Living End deck cost
You're like my age though, right? You've been playing Magic for like a while, man.
Don't
Oh my
worry about it.
goodness. All right.
But the Living End deck used to be like $10. Like nobody needed 80 of those cards.
Sure, yeah.
And you could quite literally play like 4 Beasts Within, 4 Fulminator Mage, 4 Avalanche Riders, and your opponent would leave the games with just no lands in play, just die to your 3 power creatures.
Oh gosh, yeah. A little bit different now. Those
Yep.
creatures are essentially like twice as big.
Yeah, they're 5/5s and 6/4 tramplers,
Yeah.
and 4/4 flyers and Grief.
Mm-hmm.
And now all these land cyclers like 5/7.
Right, yeah. And then the Oliphant ability as
Gives
well.
more power.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Right, and before it
You're
was like
crashing in for a ton of damage now.
you used to have like a Dead Shot Minotaur was like a 3/4 that dealt damage to flyers, which almost never came up. Like you were even playing like 2 mana cyclers and you were happy about it. Like it was a wild time. I was playing a 6/1 haster that cycled for 2 because it was like, I gotta kill my opponent. And then they picked up Force of Negation, Shardless Agent, Blue Cyclers, Grief, and the whole game changed. Once all those cards came through, Living End changed dramatically from a deck that basically been off the map for a long time to a deck that was tearing people up for a long time.
Yeah.
And now with Randall's sideboard juke, as we're beginning game 3 here, might still be continuing to tear people up.
Yeah, absolutely. We've seen a lot of people pilot Living End pretty skillfully at the series. I know Zoe Reederman, champs from last year,
Unbelievable.
really good Living End player there. So yeah, that deck, it's really cool to learn the history of that. We were talking about Amulet Titan and how it sort of evolved last round, and
Yeah.
it's cool to see that Living End has also had a very historic history as well.
And it's one of the coolest parts why I do love Modern as a format
hmm
is like when Living End showed up as a deck, the cards have been around for a while, but someone just figured it out one time.
hmm
Amulet Titan, the cards had all been around, but someone just put them all together randomly.
Mhm.
And it still just continues and continues that a day will just pop up where someone will be like, I don't know any of these cards, but this deck is crushing leagues.
Yeah, that's the great thing. You know, the Magic card pool is so big. Like, there's still decks out there that people could be discovering, right? There's that Kavu again, turn 2. We got that Triome and that Shockland, so I believe it
Yeah.
is already a 5/5.
Oh, we're gonna subtlety this. Put it back on top. Do it all over again.
Yeah, sure.
And I gotta apologize to Randall, in game 2, and I was like, oh, we played in Dotha Triumph on 1. We're gonna be so behind.
Yeah.
They slammed Kavu and just told me, nah, the plan's different now.
You got Juke too.
Yeah, which is just such a testament to how cool of a plan this is. That again, remember, Randall most likely has 4 Outburst, 4 Shardless Agent in their deck, but they cascade into more Kavus. We're just making 5/5s. Oh, I wonder if even Randall maybe brought in their endurances to shuffle their own Kavus back in and just keep cycling out these 5/5s over and over. Just an interesting. There was a time where I played Living End where I sideboarded into Crashing Footfalls. So I played a Rhinos deck instead of a Living End deck post board. So I played like Living End with like main deck Furies and Bone Crusher Giants alongside the Living End plan.
I love me a Bone Crusher Giant.
Right, and I played like your Curator of Mysteries as like a preordained, like just a 1-mana cycle in my like controlling Crashing Footfalls deck. Got 9th, of course. Like that's how the Living End plan goes. But especially in a deck that's so specific in its plan, doing something completely off that path. Like I was saying with RCQ season coming up, you only need to juke a couple opponents before you just win an event.
Sure, absolutely. Most RCQs are what, like 4 or 5 rounds before cut?
4, 5, 6 rounds, depending on the size of the place that you're playing. Then that top 8 cut, and that means you need to win 7 games. That's not a lot of people that you need to figure it out against.
Yeah, absolutely. Another Kavu there got counterspelled. And we'll start back on Michael's turn with an expressive iteration.
Most likely that Kavu that got put there from the subtlety that we redrew and just played it right back out. It'll be interesting to see that. I wonder if part of Randall's sideboard plan is bringing in like a couple of disputes and stuff to just like fight back and protect these aggressive threats that we have. I wonder if Curator Mystery is still in, is just a 4-mana 4/4. Is Grief still in the deck? Like, who's still here and who's left the party?
I think the bigger ones, maybe the Land Cyclers got cut.
I think you have to keep those to keep your mana base. But I
think
bet
so, yeah.
Striped Riverwinder, gone. That card's gone, right? That's a 7-mana 5/5. We're never going to get there.
Yeah.
But
Michael, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm just wondering. I think outside of that, I have no idea what we've cut.
The Bowmaster into exile from the expressive iteration. Now going to get cast out of exile.
Which is still important because I imagine part of Randall's deck still has most likely the Street Rates, maybe the Curators, and those like mid-game cyclers that, it might add up with his Bowmaster. I wonder if Randall has Bowmasters. Can you imagine if they bring in 4 Bowmaster, 4 Kavu, and just cascade into these big, powerful 2-drops?
I don't think they want to cascade into a Bowmaster. I think the Kavu's a house. The Bowmaster a little underwhelming to me.
Do you think he brought in Tarmogoyf?
Tarmogoyf, get out of here.
Look right now. There's an instant,
no
a sorcery,
way.
a creature, a land in our bin.
That'd be crazy.
We are a cycling deck, so we're at least fueling it ourselves.
All right, let's see what he flips over here with this Shardless Agent.
And I want to see if there's any new toys that we see. Scion of Draco is here.
Good call.
Oh, we just literally sideboard into Domain. This is the coolest. Right, we're still seeing all the Curators are here. Leyline Binding?
Leyline Bindings are really
Do you think it's a full transformational sideboard? Is it 4 Scions, 4 Kavus, 4 Leyline bindings, and 3 other cards.
There's
Randall.
endurance, so that
And
gets that's a
endurance.
sideboard card as well.
And we found a Kavu off this. So we finally made it all the way through and found this Kavu.
Mm-hmm.
So I imagine if the board is 4 Kavu, 4 Scion, 4 binding, and some number of endurances, that might be our whole sideboard. So then we take out Striped Riverwinder.
Yeah.
We take out Living End. We take out maybe some number of the Cascaders.
Yeah, you
keep
probably
in some.
trim a
Yeah.
little bit of stuff there.
Shardless is good here because it's a 2/2, right? So it adds to this aggressive plan. Maybe in some matchups we shave forces. Maybe we keep them. Maybe we're not playing all the subtleties. I could imagine even if Randall had maybe some Teferi Time Ravelers in that sideboard slot, I can imagine those being really good against opposing Cascade matchups that they're not expecting you to slam that. I'm so intrigued because it just allows an easy in, easy out. But then remember when they were sideboarding between games, Randall only swapped like 2 cards.
Yeah, and you hypothesized that they were gemstone mines, but under your new idea, there wouldn't be room for those.
But maybe those are just kind of those last few flex slots. Is you just like bring them in, bring them out, depending on if you're on the draw or on the play. The gemstone caverns. We may have said mines. Yeah, we're referring to the.
I mix those up all the time.
Yeah, both have been played at Living End at some points.
Gemstone mine is the one with charge counters.
With 3 counters on it that only last so long. As we see Michael just setting up, getting our mana together, trying to hide behind this Bowmaster, but just big threats being applied here from Randall.
People in chat keep talking about extended. That's a format I've only ever heard of.
You'll have to ask Dakota when you're older about extended.
When I'm older.
Extended was just like
it was standard extended, right?
It's a lot. People are, if they're talking about extended, they're talking about the boomery of boomery, right?
Yeah.
It is back before the formats even got renamed, right? That's before Modern even existed. There used to be like Type 1, Type 2, Extendeds, like before we got these new identifiers for our new tricks.
All right, let's talk about what's going on in the present, though, in this game. A Murktide, Michael casted a Leyline Binding down for Randall that got Force of Negation.
Do you think Randall will tell me all the sideboard cards? I think if I walk out there, Randall will tell them to me?
I don't know. He seems like a nice guy.
I want to know. It's so genius. Obviously, your mana base is set up to do it with this Endotha Triumph. You had the Blackland Cyclers. It's an understanding that Endotha Triumph plus Steam Vents, that's your full domain.
Right.
So spending your early fetches, finding the 2 of these, the deck's already set up to find, blue mana really easily. I am intrigued and impressed.
Yeah, and with Endotha and Steam Vents, you also are able to cast both of your Cascade spells as well.
Exactly.
So it's really good mana.
And it's interesting because there was a version of that 5-color domain deck that played General Ferris Rockrick, but used the Cascade engine to just do this. Find your Kavus or find Bolts or find Tribal Flames. Do they have Tribal Flames?
What's Tribal Flames do?
1 in a red, deal damage equal to domain.
Oh.
Which
to a single target?
Yeah, but can go face. So
Ooh.
Can you imagine if we're just cascading into deal you 5s as well?
Oh, man. That'd be fun.
I'm just blown away. Like, really hats off to how cool it is. And you can see what was once a coolest cucumber, Michael, trying to slam out this Murktide alongside these Bowmasters, but I would have no idea what to do. Like, you truly believed this was a Living End opponent. You planned and did as such, which is Randall's plan.
Yeah.
And now you're like, okay, I guess we're back to this other plan. Like, is this Murktide just going to have to trade with this Kavu?
Right, yeah, like you said, Michael's really well positioned. Living End is a hard deck to play against counterspell decks, right? And so Michael is sitting pretty... Oh,
another Kavu.
Another Kavu. I saw the pain on Michael's face there.
Right. Randall's sideboard plan is for decks like this. Everyone is prepared to beat you post-board, so just play a different deck post-board.
All right, yeah, we're gonna chuck a Kavu at Michael and see if he wants to trade here.
I think we do, right?
Yeah, or he could just throw the army under the bus there.
Yeah, it's just these cards are so big.
He does have... No, because the Kavu blocks there, so he's just got 5 in the air on the clapback.
Yeah, I wonder if Michael's looking to try to chump block a little to just get the game done with the Murktide before Randall can get in there. There we see the Kavu trigger, getting that force, putting it into exile.
Does that not trigger Murktide?
Oh, it does trigger Murktide.
Yeah. Let's make sure we're gonna send Dom out there and get that resolved real quick, just in case that does change any game actions here.
That's what I was reading Murktide for.
Oh, I guess maybe we shouldn't be telling them that stuff if it's missable.
In your graveyard.
Hmm.
Game's all about learning.
All right, Dom's back. We got everything squared away there. Just giving a quick reminder to our players there, so we can play some good Magic.
Game's all about learning. This is a perfect moment. I've had many a weirdness with a Murktide Regent.
Mm.
Playing out our Otawara instead of channeling it to deal with one of these threats. And preordain. Digging deep. Seeing Teferi Subtlety. Teferi makes these Kavu's later's problem, and we have exactly the 3 to cast if we'd like to. Looks like both kept on top. And I imagine drawing the Teferi, but maybe the Subtlety if we've got other plans.
The Teferi bounces a Kavu.
Yeah, it just makes it later's problem, right? Maybe we already have an answer to it, or just trying to get a little deeper while stemming the bleeding. Like we said, our plan might be just hit with Murktide 5 times before we die.
Mm-hmm.
Or 3 times, sorry. 4 or 5. We need to hit it in a couple of times.
Right.
Yeah, we currently have 6 damage, so they're dead in 3 turns unless they try to use a point of damage somewhere for their mana. So we're very, very close. A possible Bowmaster trigger could change everything.
I didn't see any street race when he turned over
That's
when he
true.
resolved, so I think that might have been a cut, and that would also be a good cut in the face of a Bowmaster.
This is very absolutely right, and you're on an aggressive plan, so maybe you're not looking to lose the life.
Mm-hmm.
But I think we may have still had grief, but maybe we just sided out the street rates, the griefs, and just been on a different plan. Because you no longer have the living end, so we're losing at least 3 copies of pitchable black spells.
Right, and then you have fewer black mana sources as
Right.
well. I think with the way you're fetching.
Yeah, you're not incentivized really to get anything outside this Endatha Triome. We see this Endurance that presumably came out of the board. And we see Randall. This is what I was wondering. Targeting them themselves, we know there's a Kavu in the graveyard.
Yeah.
Putting that on the bottom so that we can continue to cascade into these Kavus.
For sure.
I think this Endurance is out of the board and is with that purpose in mind. Allowing them the ability to have this chance to just keep recycling. You know, you dealt with this 5/5, we'll put it back on the bottom, we'll find it again later. But yeah, this game being incredibly tight now.
And then there's the question of, do you let this Teferi survive? Do you swing face? He's got 2 creatures to swing with this turn.
Yeah.
Since the Endurance just came out.
And the Endurance notably has reach, so is a blocker for this Murktide for a turn. Which is, I was still wondering last turn Michael played out the Otawara. Maybe something we want in the future here that we instead played out as land. But we need all of our mana this turn, so that all makes sense.
Right.
But every little part's going to matter in trying to do the intricate back and forth of this combat. And you can see Michael's debating, this Bowmaster might be really important to our clock, though. We might just need to find a point somewhere. Because now if Michael has a removal spell, you remove the Endurance and get in for exactly 7 now.
It looked like Randall swung both creatures at the Teferi as well.
Yeah, just needing to deal with it being an important card in the interactions of this matchup. But if Michael draws removal, another Teferi, another Otawara, just anything to put that Endurance out of the way, we have exactly 7.
I don't know how I feel about both those swings at the Teferi, because he's only got 1. I guess because then if he does block,
it's dead no matter what.
Yeah.
It's kind of that weirdness, right, where you feel like sometimes you're throwing away damage, but if they have 1 blocker, if you attack with 2, they both get in sort of situation.
All right, so he is going to throw the Endurance Reacher in front of the Murktide.
Which does mean I believe this Bowmaster gets in for a point, correct? Yep, reminding them that they are going down to 6 here. But now Michael seemingly tons of mana, but no blockers yet for the threats that Randall has.
Indeed.
And I wonder, I think we saw Randall had some numbers of Subtlety. I wonder if those started in the main deck and kind of stay in this post-board plan. Very intrigued where all the slots are, all the little knobs that have been turned to allow this to be the perfect transformational plan for Randall. It is so cool.
Randall in the tanker. He's got a few cards in hand. I can't see any of them.
Yeah, they are directly perpendicular to our view. No shot at seeing any of them. But yeah, we're deep in the final moments of this just really important back and forth. And I say that this game could go on a lot longer, possibly.
Trivia question for you, Dom. In chat, Living End was originally a deck in which format?
I have to guess extended because everyone brought it up.
Right, yeah. That would be my guess as well.
As we
How
see,
many different formats could you name, though? There's so many. So many, if you...
do I get to say stuff like pre-modern and tiny leaders,
Oathbreakers.
Oathbreakers?
Yeah.
I probably named way too many. I love Canadian Highlander.
Yeah.
Shout outs from the directorial area.
Randall's gonna crash in here.
Subtlety on blocker mode.
I think the damage was already taken.
Ooh, subtlety on beatdown mode. I wonder if we're sandbagging a bolt as our final card, getting the subtlety out here to try to apply damage. The card Lightning Bolt. Good in Magic, I'd say.
Big fan.
Just doing the moments of being like, well, is there last card Bolt? Is it just tap my Steam Vents, bolt you? We're getting very close to that mattering. Both players in the tank. A presumably very important moment. I wonder if Randall is debating on a subtlety back for the Michael's subtlety, just to remove a threat and create one of your own. It looks like we're pitching for this subtlety.
Yeah.
And we see Curative Mystery still in the deck. I think we said that, but alongside these subtleties, I wonder if maintaining that we have enough blue sources to properly do so. And very, very interesting here, Randall does have the 2 blue sources for subtlety, so clearly prioritizing something besides hard casting this.
Right.
Maybe sitting on copies of Force and Odawara, something as their point of interaction. Because if you're looking at the board, they look to be done here.
Right. And I think Michael's pretty clearly picked that up as well.
My Odawara senses are tingling again. 4 mana.
They were tingling earlier, and I think they were incorrect.
Yeah,
we'll see.
Yeah, can I get 50% on my tinglings? We'll see here. It's 4 mana against a blue deck.
Yeah.
What's the answer? It's always Odawara, right?
Nah. It's 4 bolts, actually.
Oh, that'd be sweet.
With 1 red source, but, you know.
Yeah, that's the part that's
Oh, and he forgot his Kavu trigger.
Hey, remembers now. That means you can remember for the future.
Yeah.
We are... You can see Michael be like, I'm supposed to attack with this Murktide. I'm going to turn it sideways.
What player is created with its creation?
My goodness, what are
Does
you...
that mean...
I don't know. Someone's getting big brained out there in chat.
Was that the creation of combo players, or you're asking which player created it?
I haven't a clue as we're hard casting. Lorien revealed. As we see a hard cast Lorien revealed. Currently, we're in the thinking stages of this Lorien's resolution. That makes me think Randall has a Force.
Yeah.
But if that's our plan...
Force backup plus Bolt?
Right, we
or
have
plus Odawara?
We have to have something, because this Murktide's still threatening to end the game. With exactly enough power on this flyer. Randall taking this time in this moment to be deliberate. Don't want to have this Lorien reveals 3 cards. Are they that important? Do we counter this? Because
Michael also has Bolt.
Yeah, I believe Michael might also have like Fire Ice, but have a couple other like push the game through burn pieces that might be here.
What else are you saving the Force for, though?
Well, I'm most likely saving my mana for whatever my answer to Murktide is. So the question is, I would only be interested in forcing if I could force for free. Because if I'm using my mana, I feel like there's... Oh, we could cast Force off Breeding Pool for a Steam Vents and Binding off the Endothetron. Our last card might be a Binding to deal with this Murktide.
But then he's worried about if Michael draws counter magic in response.
Correct, right? We might be worried that these 3 cards equal an answer to our answer. You know, we're in the exact final smidgens where every point of interaction, everything you do is very important.
All right, so they've rephrased their question. What player is credited with creating the Living End strategy? That is a question far beyond my knowledge pool.
We'll look into that. I don't know. Maybe try a nice little Google out
I,
there if
I'm
you got
still
it.
I'm still learning like the Hall of Famer like
Oh, right.
Magic players. Someone what was it?
The most
I
recent
learned
top 8.
about Wafo Tapo recently. I think.
And we see Randall here pitching uh, a territorial Kavu to play an endurance here, wondering what we're trying to do.
So it's gonna grow the Murktide Regent.
Yeah, my apologies. Also, shout out to Waffle Tapo, who you were just saying an incredible the control master who
Yeah.
makes decks so complicated that it's hard for other control players to pilot them.
The reason I learned about him was George took a picture in front of like some taco place or
I think it was
something.
called Waffos, right?
Yeah, and I was like, "What is this picture? Like, I
He's-
don't get this. Why are you posting this
He
for
was
like
going to the
Magic
promised
Twitter?"
land for control players.
I was like, "This is just like a restaurant," and everyone was like, "Yo, that's so cool!" And I was
Come
like,
on.
"What am I missing?"
If you're a George fan, you're probably also a Waffo fan.
For sure. Travis Wu. Travis Wu is the answer.
Oh, Odawara senses word tingling. Murktide Regent, pick it up. Allowing Randall. Oh,
Oh, he still does have a main phase too. We'll play a land out there.
and now
Randall's so excited for the story. He's got no cards in hand.
Randall has 7 damage on the crackback here.
Indeed.
And Michael no longer has their big threat. Oh, the endurance was to remove the graveyard before the Murktide recast. So Randall did that endurance to remove the graveyard, then bounced Murktide. Michael
Oh.
can't replay because there's no graveyard to fuel it.
There you go. Beats for 7.
Down to 1. And we don't have our own lethal threat.
What's that last card, Randall? What you got?
It's a land that we've discarded off the Kavu and drawn a new card, which triggers the Bowmaster down to 4 and gives us an
Oh.
Orc token.
Oh gosh. Oh, that's so scary.
That's 2 damage available. If
That's
Michael,
bolt
if Michael
range.
draws Bolt or Fire Ice.
Oh my god.
Oh, go
my
digging.
God.
Go digging.
Oh, if he had it, was slam that sucker on the field.
Well, we have to get in for combat damage first before we slam the
Sure.
sucker. Very tight here in the final moments of Murktide versus Living End, aka 5-color domain. This is so cool. Glad to see this going on.
We got some good magic for you here, folks. We're glad to
Hey.
have you with us.
Flashback to 45 minutes ago where we were wondering why we were on the 1-1 bracket. It is to see cool stuff from cool decks.
Absolutely. I don't think we're going to have time for George's backup match either. We'll
yeah,
see here.
backup match is long gone. They're already getting treats down the street.
Oh, yeah.
We have a Murktide played out with for only a single counter, delving away that Lorien revealed from the turn prior. We have the Orc army and the Murktide back to block. We have to block both of these threats. We can't let a single point of damage sneak through. We have just wall of text, big 5/5 with its 2 abilities, no keywords versus this 2/2
Yeah, there's George in the
Cascader.
background. He's done.
Yeah, you can see he's long gone hanging out there.
What he
as-
played against Hammer Time, I believe. So
Yeah.
it might have been a quick match
Yeah.
either way.
As we see a Scion of Draco. Remember, this is a
Ooh.
big 12 cost, but it's a 4/4 flyer that, we need to bring this up. What
Yes,
abilities does it give the green and red creatures?
Right, because it gives one for each different color of creature here.
I think it gives green creatures
It's got to be trample.
which is important here. We can't chump block anymore.
Mm-hmm.
This if we fully apply this, we're gonna be able to trample right on over.
All right. So
we
if
give
it's first
trample to
strike,
green.
and trample.
That means both the Shardless and the Territorial Kavu have trample, which means the Shardless could even trample for 1 over the Orc army.
And there it is.
Oh
The
my
trample will get him
goodness.
there. Wow. That was
Like,
an incredible
incredible.
game.
Unbelievably well played from both sides. What a cool deck. You can see Michael even now after the game asking, what is this plan? Where did these come from?
Yeah, absolutely. We do have this slide now for you as we wrap up this game here before we go to our 4th round here in Indianapolis, or rather there in Indianapolis is where we will be October 14th and 15th for our double 10K weekend. If you win that 10K Pioneer Showdown, you will immediately qualify to our Energy Championship at the end of the year, which the winner of goes to the Pro Tour. Winning that showdown will also get you a custom Inkling token, which will be given out at our future events. And then if you're looking to play some Modern, why don't you try our Triple Modern team trial on Sunday? You can play the same decks as your teammates, different decks. There's no weird like overlap. You can't you can use rather like they changed the rules on how that works.
It's
and
no longer a unified event.
Yes, it's not unified is what I'm trying to say. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
In addition to our main events, we also have some fantastic side events. Lord of the Rings will just be out. Sorry, not Lord of the Rings. The other universes beyond when
Wild
Doctor
Vulture.
Who.
Oh, and Doctor Who.
Doctor Who will be out, so we'll have that product for you there, as well as in our side events. So we'll have some fun stuff for you. You can also check out some fantastic Magic artists in Jeff Lovenstein and RK Post. But for now, we're going to go pick out our round 4 features. Thank you so much for watching. Stay tuned.
Bye-bye.
Welcome back, folks. We're in our final round of Wednesday Night Modern here. We brought George back on with his BAMP beans, and Alexander Lucas sitting at a great 3-0 with Scam Rack.
Rack Scam. It is Rack Dose Scam. We gotta change this. It is Rack Dose Scam.
Wait, I don't get it.
Well, the archetype is Rakdos.
Yeah.
And we're playing it with the card the Rack.
Uh-huh.
So it's Rack Dose Scam. Because the Rack in this isn't Rakdos, it's I'm playing the card the Rack.
Oh, I see. I was trying to figure out what the dose meant instead of the Rack. I see. I'm sorry.
Real quick, can we adjust the deck name to be Rack Dose Scam?
No.
It's
no.
been denied.
No, so sorry.
No pun. So sorry, everyone. As we begin the game on Swamp Thoughtseize, this swamp entered tap like many a Monastery Swiftsphere, but instead for a Thoughtseize, taking Counterspell away from George, leaving him with Lorients, Teferi, Plains, Big Teferi, and a Misty Rainforest.
That one of Big Teferi in the deck as well with 4 little ones.
And that Kahira just hanging out up in the top corner. Alex been playing a lot of these like mono black grindy decks, and George's deck should be designed to beat specifically any of these Rakdos decks trying to grind you. The 3 rings plus the 4 beans should try to grind even harder. They're trying to take cards away from you and trying to play cards like the Rack. Your goal is to stay with as many cards as possible in hand. For
those that didn't catch George's earlier match, he is playing the new Wilds of Eldraine card, Up the Beanstalk. It's a 2-mana for 1 colorless and a green enchantment that draws you a card on resolution and also draws you a card on every spell cast for 5 mana or greater.
It took exactly that one game we watched of George play, and I bought my 4 Up the Beanstalks. They're right here next to me. We are ready to go to possibly play some beans.
Oh, I thought it was gonna happen right there, but it's not quite yet. We're gonna get a flashed in Bowmaster, and I'm gonna note this Urza Saga on Alex's side of the field. He is playing a Rakdos deck, but that Urza Saga does find him that namesake card, the Rack.
The Rack. And Urza Saga is one of the most powerful cards against a counterspell deck because it's 2 uncounterable creatures and an uncounterable artifact. It is 3 total threats that George doesn't have to deal with that he can't deal with counterspells. Their typical plan of attack.
And Alex is going to get right down into these beats here, putting George down to 16.
Because if you think about it, even without Alex playing any more artifacts, we'll get our construct and then another construct in the artifact we find, and we'll have a 3/3 that is basically uninteractable for George outside of we see the Solitude in their hand, but already starting to be low on cards in hand.
You know what's a really good card against these constructs, though, is a Terminus off the top.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah. I think George might be putting some energy into the top of his deck here.
If it does happen, we are obligated to go, it's a miracle.
It's a miracle. Oh, how miraculous.
I think we're supposed to yell, it's a bonfire! But it's, that's more magic memes of the future's past. If you look up, like, top 10 magic moments ever, there's oh my god, it's Lightning Helix! There's
I know the Anurag one where they flick lightning bolt. He goes, I love Magic the Gathering! That's a great one.
That's a pretty good moment.
I like that one a lot.
You know what? I do love Magic the Gathering. I'm so glad to be here with y'all. Final match of the day. Beans versus Paper Tiger.
Yeah. Oh, gosh. All right. That is, for those, that is a construct. So it is a 0/0 with +1/+1 for each artifact on the field.
Do you think the second one is going to be Scissor Lizard or Rock Lobster? It's Scissor Lizard.
All right. You didn't even give me a chance to guess.
Oh, yeah. Have you heard of Paper Tiger, Rock Lobster, Scissor Lizard?
Of course, yeah. No. It's how you decide who goes first in a match, right?
Yeah, it's the only way to decide, right?
You lay them out, and then you say, find the creature.
No, it's not find the creature. This is rock paper scissors, but with magic cards.
Mm-hmm.
I used to do it with Scroll of Avacyn,
Uh-huh.
Soul Artifact, and Meteorite. A
Okay.
piece of paper, the literal scissors in magic art, and a big rock.
Oh, I see, I see.
That's how I used to play rock paper scissors before I knew that the literal versions existed here in the Scissor Lizard Rock Lobster. But look at this beatdown plan coming in for 3
Mm-hmm.
with that free construct, the Bowmaster alongside its army, and we have the Rack, the namesake card found off this saga, and I believe triggering this turn. Oh no, we have George has 3 cards face down and a grip more above. I thought the 3 were our only cards.
Yeah, let's get the rack up on the card finder for those unaware, just so I can remind myself of the exact text
Right.
of it as well.
If you're the Rack player, you really don't want to play against the Beans player.
Yeah. So as it comes into play, you choose an opponent. Obviously, that's going to be George here. At the beginning of George's upkeep, he's going to take X damage if
where
X
X is 3 minus cards in hand.
Right. So 3 It's round 4. Apologies. The math there's a little rough for me, but I'm sure they'll take care of it properly.
The less cards you have in hand, the more damage you can take.
Right.
So the deck's entire strategy is to strip as many cards away from you, kind of like the typical, like we said, scam in the name, using cards like Grief, Thoughtseize, and such to take cards away from you. But this then being a payoff for them being low on cards.
George puts this Kahira out onto the field, isn't going to keep it to pitch to a Solitude. Maybe he's got another white card. I guess the Steferi can also get pitched to the Solitude as well.
It looks like its job is to be sacrificed to Liliana of the Veil.
Indeed.
Oh, just gonna get rid of this plains. Don't need that. And an important part here, I think, thankfully, our director didn't let me. I think this might be a straight mono black deck out of Alex. No Rakdos to be seen, just the Rack.
Yeah, we haven't seen any red spells or red lands either.
See, we see a block.
There's an Undying effect.
Yep. Remember, still using this package of the Grief and the Undying effects.
Mm-hmm.
George debating 2-for-1ing themselves with their Solitude just to get rid of this. But bringing it back, I imagine this Bowmaster might ping the Kahira to finally take rid of it.
I would think so, yeah.
Yeah, so George thought they were taking a point of damage, but instead we're getting Kahira off the table, leaving George at a precarious 3 points of life here in game 1 with Beans.
If he 2-for-1s as well, he takes some damage from the Rack if he pitches 2 of those cards.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And it's even precarious to play your lands out here, but you just needed to take game actions. But the Rack put in the squeeze. George didn't find a bean, didn't find a One Ring, and just hasn't gone up on cards. Just spent the whole game getting their cards taken away from them. 5 mana passing it back. They could have nothing, right? Definitely not the Solitude.
Yeah, so the Lily, when it came out, it could have had that Kahira get sacrificed, but Alex opted instead to uptick it and have George and himself discard a card.
As we see Alex here animating their Mishra's Foundry.
Yeah.
And coming in for a little bit of damage. Oh, this one is Mishra's Factory with the old border printing. Coming in with their 2/2, which is an artifact. Does that pump up the constructs?
We're sitting at
Super
4
cool.
piece.
And yeah, this is the Mishra's Factory with a really cool old border version that we're using. But just using this as a creature land, as a 2/2 coming into Rumble. And we see this Solitude, but I wonder, is this even enough?
I'm going to hit one of the big constructs there, block the other one.
Our lifelink is our saving
We're
grace.
going to take 2 damage from the factory there. Gain 3.
And gain just a little bit here from blocking the construct, and then take our damage from the factory.
And sitting... We're doing a lot of up and down here.
We're just making sure everything's correct here on the combat math.
What is that Bamp Beans list? We posted it in chat earlier. Let me grab it for you here
I gotta
again.
get them beans.
George was brewing this today. He heard the call last night for us to get some of these Wilds of Eldraine cards. There, someone beat me to it.
Thank you so much.
One of George's big fans here always hangs out with us in chat. Thank you very much, Bunny.
And we see the Rack moving forward, trigger, dealing a point of damage to George. In these last moments, you know. Not only does George need to try to get back into this game, they need to deal with the board, deal with the rack, and deal with their 3 points of life that they have left.
Mm-hmm.
Lil Teferi can answer the orc token,
Yeah.
just remove a threat from play, but the rack itself is imposing to be a threat. Oh, there you go. Yeah.
Yeah, if
Bounce
you
the orc
bounce.
so that he can redo it to you. And this way that he
Ooh.
doesn't take a point of damage from the Teferi's draw. So just rocking a hard spot, and we're picking it up. Gonna go to a game number 2. Alex Luke up a game with this mono black rack scam.
I believe we have both deck lists as well. I don't know if
Perfect. I'm glad I
usually
yelled
Alex
at people.
submits. Let's see if he did.
George is playing
He
80
did indeed,
cards,
yeah.
so we're a little off the board here.
Trailing off there, but this is George's full. What did you say? 80?
This full 80. Okay.
Yeah, baby.
So the spice has now been revealed. If you look down in this bottom right corner, there's this card called Sun Scour.
Mm-hmm. Had to
This-
dig into the cold
yeah.
snap backstock for it.
This costs 5 white. It says you may remove 2 white cards from your hand rather than pay the cost. Destroy all creatures. So this allows you, when you're digging deep with the beans and the ring,
Mhm.
to then for 0 mana pitch 2 white cards and Wrath of God the board. So just finding as many little pieces we can. You see 4x Commandeer, you see Sunscour, you see Terminus, you see Lorien Revealed, Logic Knots, Prismatic Ending for 5, Solitudes. We are trying as many little spots as we can to adjust Leyline Binding, Big Teferi, finding all these spots to trigger them beans.
Mm-hmm.
In the sideboard, we have 4 Veil Summers, and I'm absolutely bringing those in.
Yeah, I think those are pretty good here. In addition, he's got that here, of course, in the companion spot. 2 Subtleties, 2 Stern Scoldings, the 4 Veil of Summers, 2 Crumble to Dust, 2 Chalice of the Voids, and 2 Dress Downs. The 4 Veil of Summers, you said, are an auto include because it is a mono black deck.
Yes.
Makes sense.
Dress Down is a answer for all of the construct tokens. They lose their abilities and become 0/0s. So if we're worried about those, we can bring that in. Crumble to Dust is technically also an answer to Urza's Saga, killing it and surgically the rest out of the deck. We may need to put some importance on dealing with Saga because how much it dominated that game, right?
Yeah.
It put the 2 threats and the rack, and those 3 cards were the 3 cards that killed George a few turns later.
Let's take a look at Alex's deck here. He's rocking, like we said, we were gonna call it a Rakdos scam deck. He did submit it as Scam Rack, so it's not Rakdos, just mono black.
Just mono black.
Here are all these fantastic spells for you, and let's take a look at his sideboard as well. We've got 3 Dothy Voidwalkers, 2 Bloodchief Thirst, 2 Collective Brutalities, 2 Chalice of the Voids, a Pithy Needle, 2 Dampening Spheres, a Ratchet Bomb, and 2 Ensnaring Bridges.
I'm bringing in this Pithing Needle because it's a Saga target that can help deal with Planeswalkers. I might bring in these Brutalities. I'm looking for more hand hate effects. Maybe even these Bloodchief's Thirst, again, if I'm worried about those Planeswalkers. And maybe Dothy if you want to get off the discard plan and get a little more aggro, take threats away. But let's take a second look at this main deck. Have you ever seen the card Augur of Skulls, the very first card here on the deck list?
I have not.
So it's a 1B, 1/1. 1B, you can regenerate it, or you can sacrifice it to make a player discard 2. Play this only during your upkeep.
Interesting. So it's kind of like a Fairy Macabre,
But
right?
instead of getting the graveyard, it's stripping them out of the hand.
Oh, right. That's my bad. Yeah.
But I've never seen this card before, and it might just be exactly the card Alex needs to take this game down.
Interesting. We'll see if it has any effect on the game ahead as players are shuffling up here. George will be on the play for game 2.
With them beans. These beans do talk.
We saw in round 1, he did get all 4 copies of Up the Beanstalk onto the field. We'll see if he manages to get any this game. He didn't last game.
And
I think that was pretty impactful. I think if he had managed to resolve one on turn 2, he would have been in a much better position.
And we have Alex here playing the Undying package, but not yet on the Not Dead After All. Most likely just hard to get hold of commons, but I wonder if it might be an upgrade for them in the future.
He should have gone to nerdragegaming.com.
I mean,
pre-ordered those suckers.
One of the hardest parts sometimes when new cards come out is like sometimes it's easier to find a new mythic rare than it is to find a new common. You know, everyone's out there listing their mythic rares, but you know, sometimes they're not listing those commons and uncommons, and both are, you know, the uncommon Up the Beanstalk being the backbone of this beans, you know, possibly the not dead at all, not
dead after all.
Not dead after all, possibly an upgrade for a deck here on the left as well. Oh my goodness. We just have here from our back booth, with the Augur of Skulls, the card that sacrificed itself to make you discard, you can play an Undying effect, bring it back, and then make them discard another 2 cards. You're still in that upkeep.
Oh my god, it's even better than
You can-
Undying of Grief. You can strip
Right?
4 cards.
And you can strip as many Undying effects as you had. You can just keep going and going until you're out of Undying effects. Alex Luke always doing something a little off the beaten path, and I've never seen Augur, and now I'm in love with it.
Yeah, I like it a lot too. George will just play an island and pass, and we'll get a turn 1 Thoughtseize from Alex.
No, and an Uncastle Veil of Summer. Hey, George? George, I couldn't help but notice you only have one land in Alorians.
Oh, man. Oh, gosh.
Get that Solitude out of here. We're getting that Sparrows headquarter. Remember, that goes to hand. Be careful there, Bean Boy. But we have our Binding, our One Ring, and our Veil. We're at least going to have... But Sparrow is going to come and tap next turn. We're 2 turns away from Veil of Summer even being online yet. Oh, it's going to be some time before George casts a spell.
Oh, man.
With this mulligan plus this Thoughtseize, Alex is already getting a situation where he should be excited to start playing out some of those discard effects. Like, we're already close to taking care of a lot of George's hand. So we play an Urza Saga.
With 80 cards, yeah, that's a very good point. It's your draws are going to be a little less consistent.
I'm anti-80 card always, by the by.
Are you sure? I feel like you've seen some Omnath piles that you've no.
The lack of consistency, just having the more cards, the less likely you see the good cards, which is the part that really gets me. As this Shrieking Affliction comes in, basically slightly different rack effect, but same concept. Looking to get George's hand down and get this trigger going. As you see here, looking specifically for George to have 1 or fewer cards.
Has done a good job of drawing his lands at the very least.
Broken their curse 2 times on feature, not getting stuck.
I know, has spent a couple of weeks struggling to hit lands on camera. Has done a pretty good job of it today in both of his matches. But
sitting on a hand of just still kind of nothings. We had to use our Binding this turn to take care of that rack because they're going to start killing us.
And I think Alex might just grab another rack here. Yeah. Pausing. We're going to look.
I'm going to go out here and make sure Alex takes that 2 damage for that turn 1 Thoughtseize. I'll be RB.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. While we're waiting for that to resolve, make sure to hit that follow button. We're live every Wednesday with fantastic Modern coverage, and we'll also be live tomorrow with some Pokemon coverage as well. I think I might build a Tinkaton deck. I play Hammer Time in Modern, and that cute little pink creature carries a hammer as well. All right, life totals have now been resolved. Alex is going to grab a Springleaf Drum, not another rack. That'll help accelerate some of his mana.
Yeah, one of the downsides of Urza Saga that I've always felt is you lose a land, right, at the end of it. So usually sometimes using the new construct alongside your Springleaf Drum just allows you to kind of recoup that mana you lost while continuing to develop with those constructs.
Indeed. We're going to smash here for 1, 2, 3 damage.
1 Scissor Lizard, 1 Paper Tiger, 1 Springleaf Drum. And 1 Augur of Shadows. George, wide-eyed, hand clap.
He seems to already know what it is.
Yeah, I'd never seen the card before, so George must be a boomer because I had never seen it before. As we see a draw, again, not a lot going on, but a 1 ring going on.
It seems pretty good here. Is going to help keep George's hand size pretty healthy, as well as give him some protection from these creatures that are going to crash in next turn. Help him stabilize a little bit. Gonna draw off that ring immediately and pass the turn back to Alex.
Can we look up Shrieking Affliction? Is it an each opponent? Is the protection currently helping us play around Shrieking Affliction?
What do you mean?
I guess it doesn't truly matter because there's no window where it would come up. So because by the time it gets back to George's upkeep, we'd no longer have the ring protection. I was kind of intrigued for a second, but not too important. As we see, not too much that Alex can do on their turn with George under the protection of the 1 ring and allowing George to fetch up another Triumph. Still at a healthy life total, much higher than they were at this point last game.
Absolutely.
And remembering, Shrieking Affliction being different than the rack, we just need to stay at 2+ cards, and we won't take any damage. But this Augur of Shadows might be looming to start taking a lot of cards away.
Sure, absolutely. I'm looking to have Alex play out some of these Undying effects.
Yeah.
Especially with like the pitch elementals where you're playing 2 cards for an effect. That
Ooh.
could be very risky as well. But we are getting into enough lands where you can hard cast that.
Well, we just got a flash Alex's hand, but didn't quite check it. I'm hoping to see just a rapid fire discard too for as much as we can.
Mm-hmm.
I see George. We know Vale, we know Kahira, and a couple other toys that they're playing with, but we've drawn 3 so far off this one ring. Oh, well, it looks like we're looking to tap a whole bunch of mana. They are.
Got a lot of different spells we can play. Counting out some mana math here.
Oh yeah, this is one of the hardest parts sometimes.
There's
Looks
a
like we're using
Lorien
Lorien.
revealed. Gonna island cycle there.
Most likely basic island. I think we're in a situation where we
would
don't
think
need to take
so.
damage anymore.
Yeah.
They already have 3 triumphs in
I think our
play.
mana's pretty fixed.
And sitting in hand, Kahira, Vale, and a couple unknowns. The Vale possibly allowing us a little bit of safety from this Augur, depending on when we time things. Because Alex can't go for these Augur moves because George can respond with a Vale. So we have to be very, very purposeful.
Yeah, so we have to find something else that he needs to waste the veil on, essentially.
Yeah, waste is a good term for it, as we see this factory being fired up and pumping up these constructs and everybody getting in.
We're just going to start getting in for some beats, but George...
4 mana, subtlety on blocking duty? It is.
Indeed.
We have this 3/3, so we can eat up either the factory or the Augur of Shadows. The constructs being just a little too big right now.
Can you undying the factory?
Yes, it'll come back as a land with a 1/1 counter on it, which is kind of cool. Allows it to get bigger in the future, and but also the
Oh, you can pump it with another factory.
Yep, because you can give an assembly worker +1, so it allows this factory to get pumped up to a 3/3 and trade off with the subtlety. The combo of factory plus a second factory.
All right, and George is down to 6 life here. A Thoughtseize. But there you go.
This is the answer to that Veil.
Mm-hmm.
And now, importantly, we might get back to Alex's next turn, and we might use our upkeep to use this Augur and just rapid fire. But George is down to 4. We might just use it to get in for combat damage. Inching ever so close to a lower and lower life total. This mono black rack scam 3-0 and trying to inch its way into...
Oh man, and he's gonna go digging with the ring too.
George has so many cards, but do any of them save them?
I don't know. I think it was pretty good.
That 4-man off the sides feels like another ring. Oh, it's
an
Omnath.
Omnath. You got a fetch land for us, bud?
A big source of life gain here if we do have a land to play out. We can even
get really
gain
full hand now too, so that Augur is looking not as great anymore.
But also not an immediate fetch, but there it is. Gain 4 on our turn.
Oh, man.
We may pass it back and gain another 4 on Alex's turn just to turn this Omnath plus this fetch into a gain 8. Yeah. George is thinking.
You do get some mana, so you could cast another spell there, but life might be... Nope.
We're on mana mode.
We're going to go for some more spells this turn.
You know, two great cards and the one ring and Omnath working really well. George might be using this mana to play a new ring.
Interestingly, does not synergize with the new edition of Up the Beanstalk since they are both 4 mana spells.
Correct. They're kind of the bridge, right? You go Beanstalk into these powerful 4s and then start playing all those big 5s and 6s. Right. Just basically, Omnath is a value engine, the ring is a value engine. And
I know, they're both so good on their own. You don't really need them to synergize with Up the Beanstalk.
That's the issue with these 4-color decks. Just all the cards are just good.
And there you go. That 3 mana, the 3 damage from the ring has now been replaced with a new ring. And that beautiful protection from everything token once again.
With Narset on it.
Courtesy of Inkling Customs. Go check them out at our shows. They do fantastic work. There'll be a Magic Con.
Ooh.
They make these fun little packs, too, that people can buy. I don't remember exactly what's in them, but I've heard great things about it.
As another Shrieking Affliction has come down. So being very wary if we can start shredding these cards from George's hand, they'll start taking big points of damage, 3 from each of these.
It's only if you have 1 or fewer cards in your hand, though. The rack works with 2 or less, right? Does damage
Yeah,
on.
the rack starts doing math at I think 3, 2, and 1. It's like, you
Yeah.
might be correct. It's worded oddly that makes it a little difficult, but the plan is always for George to have as few cards as possible.
That ring really accelerated him up to an unreachable number of cards, though. Even with an Undying effect, I think he would still be above damage.
Yeah, we are. It is getting out of card range for Alex's effects to come up. But remember,
We're going to play a Veil to cycle.
yeah, but at the end of the day, Alex does still have 8 power in play with George at 7, so down to 6 from the ring, but it is still very precarious. Yes, we have an Omnath. Hopefully we have a land to draw some cards. There it is. If we want, gain 4 now, gain 4 next turn. Be very careful because George might be able to just get out of range for Alex pretty soon.
Oh, and then up the beanstalk. Alex hasn't seen this card yet, or needs a reminder of what it does. I'll remind y'all as well. It's 2 mana, 1 and a green enchantment. You draw when you play it, and also whenever you cast a spell with mana value 5 or greater. That and Beseech the Mirror, I think, are the most popular new inclusions from Wilds of Eldritch. We didn't see any Beseech the
No
Mirrors tonight.
Beseeches out there yet.
We searched for you. I know I promised it in the tweet. We got plenty of beans for you.
And Not Dead After All was being played by David. I think we might have seen one Wicked Roll come into play today.
Indeed.
As we see Kahira now, which once you see the control deck playing out their Kahira, that's how you know you're in the late game.
Sometimes you see it really early, and that's how you know you're actually ahead.
Yeah.
If that's like the only thing they have going for them.
We're at rapid fire mode. We are upkeep feign deathing our Augur of Shadows. This might be go time. This might be go time. Yeah, George is learning what we thankfully figured out a couple minutes ago. If you have a Solitude, now's the time to get rid of this thing.
A counter spell works too.
Alex, do you have another Undying effect? Yep. Dab Swamp. How about this one? Undying Malice? Do we have Force? Do we have Solitude? Or are we about to lose 4 cards? My goodness, we might go from having tons of cards to having nuns of cards.
Nuns of cards.
I mean, we do have the ring, so we have an option to get 2 cards added there. We have this fetch land to gain some life off this Omnath. But we're seeing a very cool synergy coming up here deep into this game.
All right, in response, George is going to tap that ring and grab 2 more cards. Try and find an answer here.
Yeah, a Force or a Solitude, half people are on the hunt for.
Oh, man, our camera is not loving all these cards on the field. It doesn't know quite where to focus here. There we go.
It's the Beans effect. And we see the Augur sacrifice coming back to the Undying effect. George now debating what 2 cards are they losing.
All right.
They have so many cards. It's always interesting when someone has to discard. You see 2 different methods. People will choose all the cards they want to keep and then discard the 2 left over. Or you'll see people choose, I want to get rid of this, then I want to get rid of this. It's always the 2 different ways on deciding exactly what you want your hand to look like after the fact.
It does enter tap, so we are going to correct that. A Narset into the bin. And
one more time.
I think maybe a Stern Scalding? That doesn't seem right.
Look like Narset Lorians.
It's a Lorien,
it looks like another 2 cards disappearing here for George. Interestingly, because
another Narset
and a Logic Knot.
Logic Knot. Future Sight Logic Knot.
A very cool play, a very cool turn, but I'm so worried that George
still got so many cards in his hand. Oh my god.
The engine is just online. We just took 4 cards away from them, and they still have 3 or 4 left. We're going to gain 4 life. We're going to untap. We're going to have Beans and a ring on 3.
We're going to animate the factory. He's got blockers too. It's going to grow the constructs.
It does. These are now 4/4s, but
this Omnath is bigger because of the Kahira.
Yeah, I wonder if Alex sees that. It might just eat up one of these constructs. Yep, we see this 5/5 getting on blocking duty.
Does the factory have vigilance? Or is it just to grow it?
Yeah, I think it's just a creature right now to do the growing. And we see
gain more life off the Omnath. Oh, man.
Dun, dun. George has been playing this for a while. He knows his Omnath's a 5/5, right? But, it's a fatal push on Kahira because the fetch land has now been revolted. Alongside our Augur of Shatters also triggered revolt earlier this turn.
Yeah, I don't think George's fetch land doesn't trigger revolt on Alex's side of the field. right?
You may be right. So fully online either way, took the Kahira off, the
Mhm.
4-4 traded for the 4-4 Omnath, and cleaned up a lot of this board. George taking his damage from the ring.
Mm-hmm. Those Omnath triggers really make that ring damage pretty negligible, though.
Right. It's so wild that Omnath gains you the life to be able to get you the ring, but also makes you the mana to play a ring after the fact. Like, they go so well before and after each other.
Mm-hmm.
And we see this Odawara being played out by George. Really shows you a lot about this matchup that Alex is on 4 lands to George's 9. Just showing how far into this game a deck looking to really play out a lot of their lands versus one getting value off things like factories and sagas.
Still a lot of good discard spells Alex could draw here. There's tons of damage. He really only needs like one shriek, or since he has two, he really only needs one trigger on those shrieking afflictions
Yeah.
to put George into the danger zone here.
But the hard part is this ring is just going to draw 3 more. Like, they're so far into the clear from these shrieking effects. And now a Solitude being cast out as well.
Draw off the beans.
Yep, and then exiling the one blocker that was available, but using that to cycle into a new construct. We'll gain a little extra off this creature going away and then make the brand new one. Taking care of that, but now we have our 2 attackers.
There is also the fact that Alex is at 21 life. That
Yeah.
it's a pretty beefy life total. I know once control has the game under control, the life total isn't super relevant because they will just, negate any sort of effects that you can to claw back at.
But it is important that it's going to take them a little bit of time. They're at 8 right now. Solitude can't gain all the life in the world, so you can see Alex, very importantly, checking the time that's available.
We're going to check as well. There's 20 minutes left here for them. They got perhaps a couple more minutes due to coverage time.
And Alex's deck wins a lot faster than the Beans deck does.
Indeed it do.
So George needs to really put this away, knowing that they have to win 2 games before this clock runs out. As we see Alex untapping, no threats to be seen. We have a Saga about to fire off its final mode.
Go to its final chapter there.
Drawing up, playing out that construct, on the hunt for an impactful 1-mana card, maybe Shadow Spear?
Let's see what he can grab here. He does have the Shadow Spear. He's got the rack. There's also a Spell Bomb. Nihil?
Sure.
Bomb? I don't know.
Sounds good to me.
I don't know what it does for us too much here.
So I imagine, or post board, the only option might also be that Needle.
There's a no Ratchet Bombs too.
We might Needle for the 1 ring here.
Mm.
Just to lock George out of getting more cards. And
that wouldn't be too bad.
But we have found the Nile Spell Bomb. Interesting choice here. Most likely it might be just cycling it away using.
I was
going
to say it does get you another card.
I wonder, we may be in a scenario where we didn't bring the Needle in, so we're unable to target it right now. As we see a Stern Scolding, maybe for the first time ever, getting Augur of Shadows.
Yeah, I don't think it's an interaction you're going to see too much.
No.
Very old card with a very new card.
I mean, that's why we do it, right? As we see the ring drawing 4 cards. It's so hard to be a deck that just wants your opponent to discard and have a small hand size.
I know.
And just see rings and beans and just so many cards.
I feel like Alex has run into the exact wrong deck here.
Right. We saw it very early in, again, they won game 1, just really put the pressure on, but George finding all their value engines this time.
And he drew really well this game. George did lose, what was it? In that very first turn, Thoughtseize, he kept a 1-lander with a Lorien revealed.
That hand was rough.
And did not get punished at all. Drew the lands up in his consecutive turns and has rocked this game since.
Spent a lot of the early game just drawing lands and playing them, but now we are deep in the late game.
I wonder what George did to break his landlock curse.
It's the beans.
The beans.
You know,
praise the beans.
Usually
man.
beans are the source of a curse, but because George was already cursed, they reversed the curse. He has a new bean curse, but we don't know what it is yet.
For sure. Alex will scoop it up there.
Being well aware of needing to finish this 3rd game in time.
Indeed. Against a control player, you need all the time you can get. George also needs the clock as well.
Yeah.
He's got to win this game to min cash this event. Going 2-1-1 will not get him anything. So he's got to win this 3rd game here.
And Alex's deck is a lot faster than George's deck.
Indeed. And he's going to be on the play here.
Yeah, if Alex is winning a game, it's usually in a much faster timeline. If George is winning the game, it's going to take some time.
Mm-hmm.
So very important. It looks like George went just straight back in, no changes. Alex had a couple of checks, but no changes as well. He's going to present these same 60s, fire it up for game number 3. Still wondering, does Alex have that pithing needle or not?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so he didn't grab the pithy needle there. I don't think it really mattered, right?
No, because we were right on the kind of the tail end of that game, but I was wondering if we were going to do it to shut down the ring so that we could start taking cards away from George. We have those 2 Shrieking Afflictions that never once saw a trigger that game.
Right, he played, yeah, that's very fair. They just kind of sat there the whole game and
Yeah.
didn't really do anything.
Which, it's important to use your mana and make sure you can play your stuff out and try to get it in through counter magic, and maybe it comes up turns down the line. But I think those little intricacies, if you want to make it relevant in the future, you want to make all of your plays in that direction.
I want to see a turn 1 Thoughtseize hidden up the beanstalk here.
Ooh. I mean, it's really important, right? Any of these discard effects need to take away George's value engines. Even though you
Or a
might
1 ring. That's probably a pretty good hit,
right,
too.
yeah, the beanstalk or the ring, because it's like George will run away with either of those against your strategy. So even though maybe a counterspell or a solitude might be kind of tempting, the value engine might be the true answer because it'll be the hardest for you long over time. Looks like we're both going down to 6.
Mm-hmm. While we're waiting for players to shuffle up here, I'm going to remind you of an event both these players are going to be attending. Our Legacy for Duels event. It's going to be on September 23rd, a Saturday. Going to be starting at 11 o'clock. Entry is $40, and you can win yourself some duels. Are you looking to play some Legacy? If you're looking for cards to borrow, please hit up our Discord as well. We have plenty of very generous players. Our Legacy community hangs out on Friday F&M. They're always looking for more players. But try out this event if you've already got a deck. We're giving away a Sarah Sanctum, and we have 4 different dual lands going away to our top 4, as well as some great store credit to 5th through 8th. So go check that out on September 3rd. Both of those players are Alex and George are both regulars at our Legacy
they'll probably
F&M.
be there.
They will both definitely be there. I asked George if he wanted to commentate for the event. Sorry, no, I'm getting mixed up on our Modern RCQ. But yeah, both of our players are going to be there for sure.
As we see, it looks like both players keeping their 6s and Alex firing it off with Swamp and a pass back. As we see a Rogurin pick it up. A Zagoth Triumph. Basically revealing I have both Triumphs and full domain online. But interestingly, Zagoth allowing us to leave a blue next turn as opposed to white for a Leyline Binding.
All right, we've got a creature down on the field there. That's that Augur.
Of Shadows?
Augur of Shadows.
Of Shadows. Shadow. Windswept Heath. And
there's the beans. No. Oh, man. A turn 1 Thoughtseize would have been pretty good there.
I wonder if Alex is going to untap Undying Effect, double Augur to strip 4 cards from George.
Ooh. I'd like to see that, too.
I think post Beans, we're going up to 5 cards in hand. We strip 4, we leave George with 1. George draws up to 2. That's very short on cards. Might be worthwhile to just cash in this Augur of Shadows. But we've gone to draw step, so we're past upkeep. Remember, this can only be used in upkeep.
We'll play a Factory is land for turn. That does represent some possible beats later. And we're going to evoke a Grief and get a look at George's hand here.
Picturing Bowmaster, which I feel would be a really important card against the Ring Beanstalks.
We might not get a look at George's hand. He's thinking.
Might be subtlety to get this Grief out of here. And it is a subtlety.
What is Legacy? I don't know if that's a serious question or not. It is an older format. It's got a wider card pool than Modern. You should check it out. You can play dual lands.
If you can have them, you can play them.
You can play a Gaia's Cradle. Ever heard of that card? I've heard it's pretty good.
I have.
That's why I like Growing Rights of Itlimoc so much.
I know an NRG event was run by a 4X Gaia's Cradle deck. Just unbelievable.
Yeah, you like elves? Go play some Legacy elves.
Yeah.
And there indeed is the subtlety.
You like
pitching another.
Up the Beanstalk? What if you could play it alongside Force of Will? How
Type
about Force of Will?
1.5.
I mean, Force of Will is a counter target spell draw card when you got beans.
Ooh.
Yeah, it might be being played in all formats.
We'll see.
As a second Augur.
Oh, man, George shaking his head at that. That is not good. We just got to see some of these punishing effects for having a small hand size. We got to see a Rack or a Shrieking Affliction at some point here.
Maybe off the trigger of this third chapter of Urza Saga.
Ooh.
Might be on the hunt for the rack.
Ooh. Uncounterable way to grab that card.
And these augurs might be hunting for George's entire hand.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I'm so
So then
worried.
George has to think, like, what cards do I play before I lose them all, right?
Because, like, we play our land. I think we're down to 4 cards now. We put Kahir on our hand to go up a card. And we Solitude, trigger the beans to take 1 augur out. Wow, what a fast flurry of action here.
I think that's a really good sequence, too.
But then I think George is on 3 cards, maybe 4 cards. So this augur can still put them very low on cards in hand.
Mm-hmm.
The question is, do we have an Undying effect alongside our upkeep here? Augur. Discard 2, please. George took all those actions, got rid of 1 augur, but still losing 2 of these cards here. Discard 2 lands. Oh.
No Undying effect.
Discarding 2 lands. We're in main phase, float a mana off the saga, and on the hunt. What could they find?
I think it's got to be the rack, right?
I mean, this is the first time we've got George's hand low, so now's
there
the
it
time.
is. All right. He's gonna take a damage if that the card reads in a confusing way to me, but for every card below 3, you take a damage.
So on 2s, 1s, and 0s.
Mm-hmm.
And I think George is on 2 right now. So this puts an odd scenario that George has 3 cards in hand, it seems like. But if we play any, we're getting into that rack territory now. This might be a Teferi bounce the rack, which would be very advantageous. Move forward, get a little pick 'em up, and out of the rack. It's a cycle of Rogren Triome.
That's a little
bad
underwhelming
sign.
to me. Yeah.
And then play Flooded Strand. And we're looking at this. Grief looks like they're ready to party.
The Grief grabbed the Omnath, correct?
Right.
That would have been very helpful here.
Yeah, you could say that for sure. And George, I think cracking this Flooded Strand might be out of Triumph, so no need to crack it now. Possibly just pretending to have some mana held up.
All right, gonna animate this factory and start getting down on that beat down path.
Getting down on them beats. It looks like George has 2 cards in hand, so we're gonna take a
1
point of damage.
Yeah.
But we are in. Ooh, the last card Alex has a Cling to Dust.
Ooh, that exiles. Oh, let me.
Exiles a card from a graveyard, and then based on what it is, you either gain life or draw a card.
I think he would be looking to draw a card off of it.
Yes, I would imagine that as well. Just kind of cycle through this card, but George doesn't need to know that just yet. George goes down to 8, taking that 1 point of damage from the rack effect. Just in the squeeze. It only took 1 augur trigger to put George in a really rough spot. Here's Narset, which, you go down a card to play your Narset, but then you go up a card from drawing from looking with the Narset.
Right.
So it's still at card parity. Not going
unless
up
you whiff.
Oh, going down on cards if you whiff. Oh, we were the first ever Narset finds beans. Narset for the beans.
Ooh.
We can find a lot here that's really important. Narset for Narset, maybe find a Force, a Beans, a Lorien revealed, a One Ring, a lot of hits in here for Narset. If you're not Subtlety, Solitude, or Omnath, or a land, you're a hit. It's the Ring.
It's the Ring. That's a pretty good hit. We saw it do a lot of work last game. Kept George from dying to those Shrieking Afflictions for sure.
Oh, the prismatic ending for the rack. Oh, because Alex does have this factory alongside their Grief, is going to put 5 damage on George, getting them down to 3, getting eerily close to the end of the game.
Do you smack all at George? Do you get rid of this Narset?
I don't care about this Narset even a little. I want to get the game over with because now my Grief is lethal next turn.
Yeah, but this Ring's going to come down and give you protection.
Yeah, you're right.
Yeah, it's that pesky little thing.
Then under protection, I'm free to attack Narset because I can't go at George anyways. But then Narset's put you up on cards.
It looks like he did indeed swing at the Narset there.
Yeah, making sure to get that off the table. Remember
George drew and looked so unhappy at that card. Oh my gosh.
Alex also, remember, still at 21, and George's life total only going down from here. Remember, the protection here from the Grief, just passing the turn back. Protection gone. Damage down to 5. The Bant Bean slowly dwindling. Going to spill the beans, if you will.
Oh gosh. Not on the mat, please.
Not the beans on the mat. Oh, that sounds nasty.
It's like the scene from The Office.
Not with the
The
chili?
chili, no.
Oh, oh, Bowmaster response to the
Oh
ring.
boy.
Incoming Veil of Summer. I can feel it. Veil of Summer.
All right.
I wonder if fully in response to Bowmaster so that it's not here yet. Seems to definitely be the case. And I wonder now where Alex is going to send all these bow triggers.
Because you have to put them somewhere, right?
Right. And you can tell George looks to be being very specific. This is before the Bowmaster's even in play, so that the draw from Veil doesn't trigger Bowmaster either.
Right.
Because every point is very important to George right now.
And he's now got hexproof from the Veil.
Yes, I believe we have Hexproof from Black and Blue, which is Alex's deck.
Right.
And very important, wondering where these bow triggers are going to go. Because you will still have the ETB and the 2 from the ring, but those 3 triggers have to go somewhere.
So you can throw one at the grief.
Yeah, looks like throwing one at the grief.
One at the token.
And maybe one at yourself just
Yeah.
to protect through it all.
You gained one.
Oh, and then you do the last one at the Bowmaster, the Orc. It goes up to a 3 with only 2 damage on it.
There you go.
Oh, it looks like we sent one upstairs to ourselves, just in case. 22-5. George really needs to find a way for his life to start going in the other direction, because it's just been dwindling down.
Gonna play another to cycle.
Yeah, but now this Bowmaster is here. Gonna target the token itself. Just digging deep. Remember, George is not protected by the ring, but is protected by the effect from their first Veil of Summer. Shocking down to 3.
Oh, and there's
No.
Sunscour, but he's only got one card.
Oh, and he is conceding.
Whoa, gosh.
Oh, and I believe that's the game. A good old classic handshake there from Alex.
Oh, man, we never got to see the Sunscour.
Down with the beans, up with the scam rack.
All right, we'll have to get George's take on whether that card is good enough or not. It wasn't quite enough to get him out of there. Oh, man. Incredible games from our players there. Alex will take home the entire 4-0. He did want to leave early, but stayed around to play on camera and got rewarded. George put on a great show for us, played 2 fantastic matches here. And y'all have been fantastic as well. Thank you for joining us tonight for our coverage. Before we go, we're going to run through a couple of ads, but I'll remind you that we will be live next Wednesday with coverage as well. First of all, let's take a look at our weekly schedule. Tonight, of course, was Modern. Tomorrow will be Thursday with our Commander and Pokemon nights. We will be live with coverage of our Pokemon event as well. Friday will be Legacy FNM as well as One Piece. Reminder that Kingdoms of Intrigue OP04 releases next Friday. There are pre-orders up for booster boxes on our website right now. Saturday is our Digimon League as well as Monday. We have 2 different league nights for our Digimon crowd because they are such a fan of it. And Monday is EDH as well. Tuesday is Pioneer, One Piece, and now Lorcana. Tuesday is also a One Piece League, and that will be our very last league night before the reset for the new set. So come on down and make sure you get all of your points for that juicy pot. That is it for our weekly schedule. If you're looking to buy some Magic cards, head on over to nerdragegaming.com. We've got all sorts of fantastic singles for you to buy, as well as Wilds of Eldraine cards. You can schedule for in-store pickup or ship countrywide. The more you spend, the more you save, with 1% back as soon as your first purchase, all the way up to 10% back with each purchase. If you don't see a card in stock that you're looking to buy, add it to your wish list and get notified as soon as we list it. We are listing new cards every day. If you're looking to play some competitive Magic, head on over to Indianapolis in October. We will be there October 14th and 15th for the NRG Series. We have a double 10K weekend for y'all. We will be hosting a Pioneer Showdown on Saturday, the winner of which qualifies for our championship event in January. That's an invitation only. We've got some fantastic champions already lined up to attend that event, the winner of which goes to the Pro Tour. The winner of our showdown also receives a custom Inkling token. I think I would pick an Angel. You let me know in chat which token you would pick. And then Sunday is a 10K team trial that will be triple modern. Details for how that event works in our Discord and on the event page itself. If you're looking to play some side events, we've got some fantastic options for you as well. You can win some uncut sheets, some oversized cards, some great sealed product. Universes Beyond Doctor Who will be out, and you can play some great pre-con events for that as well. If you can't make it out to Indianapolis, head on over in November to Madison. That will be our 10K Modern Showdown and our 5K Pioneer Trial. That will be the last NRG event of the year. So make sure to head on out for that. We get a fantastic crowd in Wisconsin, so we're very excited to head there. But in the meantime, that'll wrap it up for our coverage tonight. My name is Viva Goodman alongside Dominic Stryker. Dom, thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for tuning in.
Beans.
Beans.